For some of us, the word bunnyman may sound like a cute and cuddly character from a book. But for some people from Northern Virginia, it's the source of a terrifying urban legend. The story goes that if you go near a certain bridge in Clifton on a certain night of the year, you could meet your doom at the hands of the bunnyman. Unless you whack him upside the head with a big carrot, maybe. Anyway, one story behind this urban piece of folklore starts with a man named Douglas Griffin. It's said that he had been admitted to an asylum, but managed to escape back in 1904. The bus that was transporting him and some of his fellow patients had an accident. Most of the patients were found after the crash, apart from him. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Weeks later, strange clues started appearing in the woods. Now, if you're traveling through Italy, Spain, or even parts of Asia, seeing a rabbit dish on the menu isn't something unheard of. But if you see clues that a man is munching on bunnies on a field in Northern Virginia, now that's a bit creepy. Obviously, rumors started to spread that Douglas had this unusual diet because he needed to survive alone in the wild. Then the story got even more terrifying, as it went on to say that on the night of October 31st, of course, Douglas also began hurting people. Now don't get too freaked out just yet. The truth is, there was never actually an asylum in Clifton, and the story about Douglas Griffin may just be made up by locals. But that doesn't stop people from believing in the bunnyman, and it's become a popular tale that's even inspired its own movie franchise. One guy who tried to get to the bottom of the bunnyman legend is an archivist for Fairfax County. He discovered that at the root of this legend was actually a couple who had a terrifying encounter with a man who threw something at their car. Not very interesting so far, sure, but he was supposedly dressed in white or light-colored clothing. He may also or may not have some sort of object on his head too. Did it look like bunny ears? We'll never know, but from there on, the story took on a life of its own, with people swapping stories about a man in a bunny suit chasing them through the woods. To this day, some refuse to believe that the bunnyman legend isn't true and think that local authorities are trying to cover something up. Obviously, there's no real evidence to support their claim. Regardless of whether or not the bunnyman was real, don't you just love a good urban legend? Especially the ones that truly make you wonder if they could actually be true. Luckily for us, we live in the age of unlimited information and have access to some great resources. It gives us the opportunity to finally put some of these legends to the test. First up, the question on everyone's mind: can a rat really crawl up a toilet? Drumroll, please. And the answer is yes. I mean, sure, rats can make cute and cuddly pets, but the idea of them using your toilet as their personal swimming pool is not so adorable. One video posted online explains the whole process in a creepy yet fascinating way. These sneaky little rodents can climb up pipes and squeeze through the twists and turns of your toilet like a contortionist in a circus. And believe it or not, they're actually good swimmers. And apparently, they hold their breath really well and don't mind too much what exactly they are swimming in. Some other urban legends are a bit more virtual. Picture this: it's 1981, and you're hanging out at your favorite suburban arcade. You've been playing for hours, but there's one game that's got you hooked: Polybius. It's got a surreal digital glow that bounces off the faces of all who are playing it. You can't stop playing, and neither can anyone else. Soon enough, things start to get weird. Players start feeling nauseous, stressed, and having horrific nightmares. The game is serviced more often than other games, with men in black suits opening the machine every week to record its data. But they don't seem interested in its coins. Soon after Polybius appears, the mystery arcade game vanishes without warning, taken by the same men in black suits, leaving no record of its existence. Now that's the main story at least, and it's one of the biggest unsolved mysteries in the gaming world. Like all good stories, it's kept alive by its fans. But here's the thing: most people don't think the game ever existed. The legend of Polybius is full of conflicting details. No one even has a copy of the original game file, so no one can agree on what the game was actually like. Was it a puzzle game? What kind of graphics did it use? But there's one thing everyone seems to agree upon: it was disorienting and confusing. In it, colorful geometric shapes bend and fold from a central portal like some sort of digital hypnosis. According to legend, the intense combination of vector and raster graphics in Polybius made the mind susceptible to concealed messages from authorities. While the details of the game are ambiguous, its story does have some roots in real events. Back in the 80s, some say there was a game called Tempest that made some players feel a little queasy. Okay, maybe queasy is an understatement. Apparently, it caused uncontrollable movements and motion sickness in players. Talk about a wild ride. Even the subliminal video game connection is real. Some official agencies do use video games to train their personnel. Combine all of that with the short-lived 1985 game Polyplay, an 8-game arcade cabinet that was recalled, possibly for copyright reasons, and you have a pretty solid foundation for a massive fraud. Oops, urban legend. If you think about it, even the name Polybius itself could have been a misunderstood version of Polyplay. I think I would file this under horsepucky. Now let's travel to Europe for a bit of this next might be a real urban legend. The mystery figure that roamed a local forest in Switzerland was the source of a really intriguing story. For a whole decade, people were talking about this person who wore a gas mask and camouflage attire while walking around. Despite numerous eyewitness accounts, no one could confirm the existence of this creepy character, making him a legend in the eyes of many. They even gave him a cool name, Le Lion. The plot thickens though. In 2013, someone finally captured a photo of Le Lion, proving that he was indeed real. Later, his gas mask and coat were found in the woods, along with a note that suggested he was harmless and just couldn't take being seen as a monster anymore. Did he disappear? Did he move on to another forest? Did he go undercover as a friendly clown? We may never know, but one thing's for sure. Le Lion will always be remembered as the spirit who roamed the Swiss forest for a decade, and we can't help but wonder what his story truly is. Now, you've seen the movies, read the books, or at least heard about the name Tarzan. Well, it turns out he might not actually be just a figment of someone's imagination. A possible real-life Tarzan might have indeed existed at one point. And get this, it could be the 14th Earl of Streatham, William Charles Milden. This man's survival tale sounds way too familiar to Tarzan's. Both came from English noble families and were shipwrecked in Africa. Milden's ship was destroyed during a 3-day storm, and he claimed he survived by clinging to a piece of wreckage. He washed ashore and started to pal around with a group of apes. He remembered saying of that time in his life, "For some strange reason, I was not afraid of these strange creatures. They were hideous to look upon, but seemed gentle and harmless." He became so close with the apes that they provided him with food, and he even built himself a tree house. He was really strong and flexible for his age, but unlike his cartoon counterpart, never became the leader of the animals. Unlike Tarzan, he didn't speak to the apes, but did figure out some form of communication.
Look, the sea is glowing from within. It's stunning, yet eerie at the same time. White glow covering a huge area of the sea surface is not what you expect to see on a dark night. You look at one of the scariest and mysterious phenomena in the ocean. Let's study it. On January 30th, 1864, the Confederate ship CSS Alabama was sailing southwest along the Horn of Africa when the crew members noticed a mysterious white glowing sea. Captain Raphael Semmes described it as a sickly and unearthly glare of a phantom sea. Although Semmes was a stern and fearless sailor, he was scared by this bright water in the middle of the dark sea. At first, the crew thought they had been sailing over some kind of flooded ridge. They threw a weighted line, which immediately sank to the seabed several hundred feet down. Obviously, the mysterious glow was not a ridge. For several hours, the ship sailed through this eerie glowing sea, and then, suddenly, this bright region ended. The Alabama entered the usual dark waters. Captain Raphael Semmes' description was one of the very first documented accounts of a mysterious and elusive phenomenon called the Milky Sea. In 1851, in the famous book Moby Dick, this phenomenon was described as a sailor's quiet, superstitious fear at the entrance to the midnight sea of milky whiteness. Jules Verne, in his novel 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, described this phenomenon more scientifically. One of the characters of his book said that the whiteness was caused by the presence of myriads of infusoria, a sort of luminous little worm, gelatinous and colorless. For centuries, people have reported mysterious glowing water at night, and only recently have scientists got closer to solving this mystery. But first, let's be clear. What Captain Raphael Semmes saw was slightly different from that violet-blue glow called bioluminescence. Aristotle wrote about luminous algae and phytoplankton in the 3rd century BCE. He noticed that sometimes the water produced bright blue flashes when he hit the surface of the sea with a baton. In 1492, Christopher Columbus observed unusual flickering of light in the ocean caused by bioluminescent marine worms. As it turned out later, those worms rose to the surface to perform a circular mating dance. In the late 1800s, scientists discovered that bioluminescence is the result of an oxidative reaction inside certain animal and plant cells. You might have seen it at night while walking along the shore. If not, you can watch a video with bioluminescent water on the internet. But milky seas are a slightly different phenomenon. The sea glows white as if it's illuminated by a bright spotlight, and the area of white water can extend for miles. Unlike bioluminescence, milky seas are a rarer and quite elusive phenomenon, which is why it was so difficult for scientists to determine its nature. People didn't come across such glowing waters very often, so many regarded it as legends about mermaids or sea monsters. But in 1985, science got a chance to study this thing in more detail. That year, a U.S. Navy research vessel got into the Milky Sea while sailing near the Arabian Peninsula. There were scientists on board who collected some samples of milky water and conducted a laboratory analysis. And that's what they found out. The water contained bioluminescent bacteria, but what caused them to glow? Scientists suggested that algae colonies first rose to the water's surface. They began to bloom and gradually decompose. Those cells of rotten algae burst and release special substances, lipids. A huge number of bacteria began to feed on lipids and multiply rapidly. The number of bacteria grew in such large numbers that they began to produce a continuous white glow. But where exactly and under what conditions could these milky seas appear? It was necessary to know not only for scientists, but also for authorities. Such a bright spot in the water could reveal the outlines of a submarine and turn it into an easy target for enemies. So scientists continued their research. One of them was atmospheric scientist Stephen Miller. He started studying milky seas in the early 2000s and made a breakthrough in his research. To begin with, he decided to find out if the sensors on space satellites were capable of seeing bioluminescence. Miller started looking for any mention of extensive milky spots on the internet. He came across the Frontier Science portal, where people wrote about strange and unexplained phenomenon around the world. There, he found a report from the British merchant ship SS Lima, which hit the Milky Sea in January 1995 while sailing along the Horn of Africa. This is how the log entry described the event. The bioluminescence appeared to cover the entire sea area from horizon to horizon, and it appeared as though the ship was sailing over a field of snow or gliding over the clouds. After that, Miller collected the images taken by certain satellites over the place where the SS Lima sailed at that time. At first, he didn't notice anything strange. But later, he realized that he was looking directly at the Milky Sea. The area of the glowing spot was so large that he had to scale the image down. That's when he saw a spot that looked like a comma. The edges of this spot coincided with the place where the crew of the SS Lima saw the white glow. Miller studied the images of this area taken before, during, and after the encounter, and found out that the Milky Sea rotated counterclockwise to the local ocean currents. But most importantly, Miller now knew that the White Sea could be seen from satellites. In 2011, 2 satellites with more sensitive sensors, capable of seeing in poor light, entered Earth's orbit. They helped Miller and other scientists to find out that Milky Seas appeared most often in the winter and summer in the northwestern Indian Ocean and around Indonesia. Great! Now Miller had the place and time to work with. He analyzed satellite data for the period from 2012 to 2021 and found out that one of the largest Milky Sea incidents occurred in 2019. For 45 nights, a white glow covered 40,000 square meters, which is the approximate area of Kentucky. But even after all these studies, scientists haven't managed to find the exact cause of the white glow. In addition to the idea about the disintegration of algae, researchers have put forward a theory that the glow may be caused by quorum sensing. This is the ability of bacteria to communicate using chemical signals that produce light. Okay, let's say there's some truth to this, but why are they doing this? To find out, let's look at classical blue bioluminescence in other organisms. Some biologists suggest that with the help of the glow, bacteria attract partners for reproduction. Another theory claims that the bright light works as an alarm when dangerous enemies appear in the sea. For example, a colony of phytoplankton meets hungry fish. The organisms turn their glow on to attract larger fish. It's like using evil to fight another evil. There are many theories, but what's the problem with figuring out the exact reason? Even with all the satellite help and studies of Milky Seas, it's quite difficult to get to the right place at the right time. Let's say a white glow the size of a football field appears in the sea. The satellites notice this and send a signal to the research center. Next, a team of scientists boards a vessel and goes directly to the place. The distance to the Milky Sea can be quite big. And by the time they arrive, the glow has already disappeared. In an ideal situation, scientists need to be around the area before, during, and after the glow to get the full picture. Unfortunately, this is not possible at the moment.
Well, here you are, on a week-long trek through the Himalayas. You're exhausted, the cold is cutting through to your bones, and suddenly, you stumble upon a human skeleton near a lake. You look around, and there are dozens, maybe even hundreds of bones scattered across the ground. Well, guess what? This really happened in 1942 with an Indian forest official. Since this chilling discovery, researchers have been trying to figure out how so many people lost their lives in such a remote, isolated spot. So, what happened up there? We're talking about Rupkund, a lake sitting at over 16,000 feet in the Himalayas. But it's not just known by that name. People also call it Mystery Lake, or even more bizarrely, the Skeleton Lake. This place is remote, I mean really remote. It's not just because it's insanely high up, but also because it's surrounded by snow-covered mountains. Now, if you're planning to go there, make sure you have some solid hiking shoes. It's a week-long trek covering more than 30 miles of tough, rugged terrain. Along the way, you'll pass through all kinds of challenging landscapes, moss-covered oak forests, misty fields with an eerie vibe, and up at the top, snow. The highest point of the trek is a knife-edge ridge called Junargali. Just below that lies Rupkund. The closer you get to the lake, the darker the atmosphere feels. And on the ground, you can find human skeletons scattered around, belonging to more than 300 people. Along with them, there were things like wooden artifacts, leather slippers, and rings. Okay, so something really macabre happened here. But what? Well, we have 3 main theories. Theory number 1, the local legend. According to this story, a long time ago, a king named Raja Justival went on a pilgrimage deep into the Himalayas to reach a sacred mountain temple. He brought his pregnant queen, Rani Balumpa, along with a group of servants, dancers, and others. While they were up in the mountains, a massive hailstorm hit, or as the legend goes, an angry deity started hurling iron balls from the sky. Either way, the storm was brutal, and they had nowhere to take shelter. In the end, they all lost their lives near the lake. Theory number 2, an escape route. Some say the remains belong to Indian soldiers who tried to invade a foreign territory back in 1841, but they were defeated. Over 70 of them were forced to make their way back home through the Himalayas, and they met a tragic end along the way. Theory number 3, a mass grave. This theory suggests that some kind of widespread health issue hit the group. They were all buried there, in isolation, to prevent the disease from spreading. In this case, Rupkund Lake and its surroundings would basically be a cold, remote cemetery. Now, do you know what all these theories have in common? They all assume that the skeletons belong to a single group of people who died in one catastrophic event. But then science came along and things got way creepier. In 2019, 28 scientists from institutions in the US, India, and Germany teamed up for 5 years to figure out what the heck happened up there. They studied the remains of 38 individuals, 23 men and 15 women. And right there, we can already toss out theory number 2. That's important because if these people had been soldiers on a military mission, you would expect most, if not all of them, to be men. Armies in the past were almost entirely male. But here, there were just too many women for that to make sense. And on top of that, no signs of combat or military gear were found at all. After a genetic analysis, researchers noticed that the individuals weren't part of the same family, at least not by blood, like third-degree relatives or closer. And most importantly, they were mostly healthy. These two facts help rule out theory number 3. It probably wasn't some kind of highly contagious health problem. But the most shocking part is that these skeletons didn't belong to just one single group. They actually came from 3 distinct groups. The first group had ancestry that falls within the range of present-day South Asians, basically from the regions that are now India, Pakistan, and Nepal. The second group had ancestry typical of Eastern Mediterranean, just like people from today's Greece, or more specifically from Crete. And they also identified one individual with Southeast Asian-related ancestry. The dating also shows that these remains weren't deposited at the same time. In other words, groups 1 and 2 didn't live during the same period. Their deaths were actually spread out over as much as 1,000 years. Oh great, now theory number 1 is out the window too. After all, the studies can confirm that these people passed away in at least 2 separate tragic events. According to the researchers, there is a possible clue about where at least some of the people with South Asian ancestry might have come from, or why they were even up there in the first place. Rupkund Lake isn't part of any major trade route or anything like that, but it is along the path of a pilgrimage called the Nanda Devi Raj Jat. It still happens today, once every 12 years, where people hike through the mountains for worship and celebration. Now, the written records of this pilgrimage only show up around the late 1800s, but there are inscriptions in nearby temples that go way back, like to the 8th or 10th century. So, it's possible the tradition started much earlier, and maybe some of these people passed away during one of those early pilgrimages, due to a heavy storm or some other natural disaster. Okay, but how do we explain the group that came from Greece? Well, that's definitely more puzzling. First, because there aren't any historical records or evidence to explain who these people were or what they were doing in the far reaches of the Himalayas, so it's hard to know where to start. The study suggests that they could have been a group of unrelated men and women born in the Eastern Mediterranean region around the time the Ottoman Empire controlled that area. The evidence suggests that they had a diet mostly based on land-based foods, not the seafood you would expect from people living near the coast. So they might have lived inland and somehow ended up in the Himalayas, possibly traveling for reasons that researchers can't fully explain yet. The best guess is that they were also participating in a pilgrimage, but honestly, it seems pretty unlikely that people from Europe would have traveled all the way to Rupkund just to do that. And let's assume they did. What exactly happened to them? I mean, how did they all pass away in the same exact spot? Well, the researchers can't say for sure, but people online love to speculate. You think? Some suggest that they fell from the Junagarli Ridge, or since they were at such a high altitude, maybe they passed away due to acute mountain sickness. Up there, the oxygen levels are much lower, which can lead to things like headaches, vomiting, and dizziness. The problem is, it can escalate quickly, and if it affects your lungs and brain, it can become life-threatening. So yeah, it could have happened. But it's still strange to think it happened to so many people all at once. We definitely still need a lot more answers when it comes to Rupkund. But one of the obstacles researchers face is that the site remains highly disturbed and unpreserved. Over the years, trekkers have moved around the skeletons, or worse, some have even taken them home as macabre souvenirs. But the more we mess with those remains, the harder it becomes to find an accurate answer in the future, no matter how much science advances. So, for now, the Mystery Lake will remain exactly that, a big mystery.
Let's face it, most ancient tombs have been looted at least once. No matter how scary the rumors could have been, most mummies were open too. But one. This is the Bashiri mummy, and it puzzles everyone so much that nobody dares to see what's inside. Meet Howard, but you must know him already if you're into Egyptian history. He's primarily famous for discovering King Tut's tomb back in 1922. But few people know that before this revolutionary discovery, he had probably found another mummy. It happened in 1919, and it goes by several names, either the Bashiri mummy or the mummy of Pacheri, or the untouchable one. Some reports say that Howard stumbled upon the Bashiri mummy in Luxor's Valley of the Kings, just where he would later find Tut's tomb. Despite this find, not much is known about this particular mummy. The reason why it's still unharmed in any way is not because of some superstitions, but because nobody is sure that they can undo what they do if something goes wrong. The mummy is so intricately wrapped that researchers never unfurled it for fear of irreversible damage. The golden rule of anyone who works with antiquities: if you're not sure you can't make it better or preserve it unchanged, do not touch it. History knows many examples of ancient relics ruined beyond repair, say Ecce Homo, or smiling statue restoration. The delicate fabric that covers the mummy's face has this cool design that kind of looks like a pyramid. The researchers are not 100% sure, but this might be the only one of its kind with that embalming style. But without knowing the ancient technique, it's next to impossible not to ruin the mummy while unwrapping and wrapping it back. Back in the day, people, both experts and looters, would unwrap mummies for all sorts of reasons, mostly to study them. Luckily, these days, we have advanced tech that lets us check out what's inside a sarcophagus without having to unwrap anything. After taking a closer look at the Bashiri mummy, researchers figured out that it belonged to a man who was around 5.5 feet tall and lived during the Ptolemaic era, which makes this mummy roughly 2,300 years old. The Egypt Museum shared that the X-ray scan also uncovered an inscription of the guy's name, but it's a bit tricky to tell if it says Pacheri or Nenu, adding to the intrigue. The museum also pointed out that the fancy casing the mummy is in features all sorts of decorated scenes. You can see the mummy lying on a bed, flanked by deities Isis and Nephthys, along with the 4 sons of Horus. Plus, there are 2 images of the funerary god Anubis at the feet of the casing. By the way, Bashiri mummy is not the only one that has remained untouched. This is Issa Temkebde, and Gaston Maspero, a French archaeologist, made the decision to leave her mummy untouched, wanting to keep her resting peacefully since she was in such amazing shape. He did mention, though, that her tomb had been raided long ago. Thanks to some X-ray work, we learned more about the mummy. The scans revealed a few artifacts still wrapped up with the wife of a high priest, including amulets around her neck, right arm, and forehead. The X-rays also showed she had some dental issues and arthritis in her knees. While she passed away as an older woman, it's tough to pinpoint her exact age. However, various sources from her son's reign indicate that she was held in high regard in the kingdom. Isitemkebt served as the sister wife of Penejam II. You got me right, they were related by blood and were siblings, but back then it was pretty common to get married this way to preserve the purity of the bloodline. Say that to Habsburg, duh. Their chase for purity only led to inbreeding and the notorious Habsburg's jaw. Right, I guess we should not judge ancient Egyptian rules and morals, but what we can say for sure is that both Bashiri and Isitemkebt were incredibly lucky to stay untouched. The odds were not in King Tut's favor though. The researchers' work hit him hard. The tomb itself was discovered in 1922, but it wasn't until 1925 that the nested coffins were opened during an excavation. The outer coffin, held together with silver pins, opened up to show another coffin shaped like a mummy, decorated with colorful glass and flower garlands. There were worries about the king's mummy because it had been exposed to moisture. The middle coffin was pretty heavy and didn't have any handles, so they had to be super careful taking it out. Inside the innermost coffin, which was solid gold and wrapped in a red cloth, they found the royal mummy, and this all went down on October 28, 1925. Tutankhamun's mummy, measuring about 6.07 feet, fit snugly into the innermost coffin, which was 6.17 feet long. You can already tell there was a problem, right? Imagine how hard it is to extract something as fragile as an ancient dried-up mummy, especially when there's not much room for maneuver. Plus, the mummy looked sus. It was pitch black. Howard Carter, the lead archaeologist of the expedition, estimated that around 2 buckets worth of oils had been poured over the mummy. But care had been taken to avoid the mask and feet. It was made to preserve him better. The body was positioned at a slight angle in the coffin, and there was a noticeable difference in the amount of dark oils on the right and left sides, indicating that the coffin might have tilted while being lowered into the sarcophagus. This oil created moisture inside the coffins, and over time, it reacted chemically, which Carter described as a sort of slow, spontaneous combustion, leading to the carbonization of the linen wrappings. Unfortunately, the combination of heat and moisture took a toll on the mummy's trappings as well. The crook and flail fell apart, the resin scarab cracked, and the threads holding the hands and mummy's bands started to decay, making everything quite fragile. Plus, the oils hardened over the years, effectively gluing the mummy and mask to the coffin's bottom. To try and separate the mummy from the inner and middle coffins, they were placed in the sun for several hours, reaching temperatures of 149 degrees Fahrenheit. Despite this effort, the mummy remained stuck, so the initial examination had to be done right where it was. The first part of Tutankhamun's mummy the researchers checked out was his lower legs and feet, meaning they started the examination from the bottom up. As they peeled back the bandages, they uncovered the first of many treasures wrapped up with the king. They took their time to carefully document and photograph everything they found. The inner layers of bandages were in pretty bad shape, mostly turning to dust, making it tough to figure out how everything was originally wrapped. Still, the overall methods matched what was seen in other nobles' mummies from that time. Lots of folded linen pads were used to shape the torso and thighs. The outer and inner bandages were made from fine linen, while the middle layers were coarser. They had some intricate bandaging around the shoulders and chest with a similar style around the groin. Each limb, along with fingers and toes, which were fitted with gold caps, was wrapped separately. Tutankhamun even wore gold foil sandals on his feet. They hoped to separate the mummy from the coffin by removing the outer bandages, but the resins had stuck the body to the coffin. So, the researchers ended up chiseling it out. To do this, they had to cut the torso in half at the hips and disarticulate the arms to continue unwrapping. Each part was treated with hot paraffin wax for stability, and later the hands and feet were reattached with resin. Finally, they used hot knives to detach the head from the mask. To check the teeth, it was decided to make an incision around the jaw and neck, which was later fixed with resin. So technically, the scientists did all they could to preserve the mummy, but still, in a way, it ended up being damaged beyond repair. What do you think? Should they have left it in the coffin? Or did they do the right thing? Let us know in the comments.
Scientists have finally solved the Loch Ness Monster mystery. Here's the spoiler, you ready? It's not a real monster. It's probably a dinosaur that survived through the ages, or just a bunch of debris floating on the water. Thanks to many findings on the Loch Ness creature, we have proof of another story to tell you. It was 1933 when a man named George Spicer and his wife were driving along the shores of Loch Ness. That's when they saw something massive with a long neck moving across the road. It looked like a creature straight out of the prehistoric era, a dinosaur-like beast unlike anything they'd ever seen. That was the moment that Loch Ness monster theories started spreading around like wildfire. One of the most famous Loch Ness monster sightings came just a year later, in 1934, when a man took a photograph that became the most well-known image of Nessie. That's the nickname she was given. She? Anyways, the photo, known as the surgeon's photograph, showed a long-necked creature rising out of the water, and for years it convinced people that the monster was real. But years later, the truth came out. One of the men who helped take the photo confessed it was all a hoax. The photo had been staged after all. When the photo was published, it had been significantly cropped. This made the animal in the picture look much bigger than in real life, fueling the theories that the Loch Ness monster did in fact exist. In the 1960s, one of the first big scientific attempts to investigate the mystery of the Loch Ness monster happened. A research team took sonar equipment to the lake and spent hours scanning the waters in search of evidence of large creatures. What they found was puzzling. They recorded several objects moving deep in the loch, or lake, with no clear explanation as to what it was. Though the team didn't manage to capture anything definitive, this sighting helped fuel the belief that there was indeed something massive living in Loch Ness. After that, research about the mystery of the Loch Ness monster kept popping up. In 1972, with the help of underwater photography, some researchers managed to capture strange images, which got people's hopes up for a minute. But the truth is, this early research about the Loch Ness monster was far from conclusive. Now, of course, not everyone bought into the mystical, magical theories about the Loch Ness monster. Theory 1, from a professor of zoology at Oxford University, has made it clear that the monster is a biological impossibility. Hey, my pediatrician said that about me, too. Meanwhile, he says that no skeletal remains have ever been found in the region. Plus, no fishermen have ever caught anything resembling the creature in their fishing nets. For him, this works as proof that it simply can't be real. When it comes to the famous photos of the Loch Ness monster as evidence, well, that's pretty simple. The professor offers a more down-to-earth explanation. He argues that these images are either showing floating debris or birds, like cormorants, which have long necks and often appear to be low in the water. When people refute his suggestion, he takes us back to human psychology and explains that people often make mistakes and misjudge the size of things, especially when they just caught a glimpse of it, and even more so when they are hoping to see something specific. Now, many of those alleged photos depict an animal with a long neck and a small head, which has led some to believe that what they're seeing is a plesiosaur, a giant marine reptile that lived 215 million years ago and disappeared with the dinosaurs. The idea of a plesiosaur surviving all these years is a theory that's been around since the first sightings of the creature. But this researcher isn't buying it. He explains that no plesiosaur fossils have been found in the region dating to anything later than 66 million years ago. The idea of a prehistoric creature still lurking in the waters of Loch Ness just doesn't hold up scientifically. Then there's theory number 2, from a British naturalist who has spent over 50 years investigating the Loch Ness monster phenomenon. His conclusion is a little less dramatic. He believes that most people who report sightings of long-necked creatures are misidentifying other animals. He suggests people think they are seeing a sea serpent. Reports of sightings from the Loch Ness monster have been around since the 6th century CE, long before they were distilling Scotch whiskey or other explanations. Early reports of these sea serpents describe large creatures with long snake-like bodies and multiple humps. Some say the creatures were as big as boats, and many swore they saw something swimming in the waters. Many of these early sea serpent sightings may have been misunderstandings or exaggerations of normal animals in the loch, like large fish or even swimming birds. They could have been large eels, which are known to live in Loch Ness. These eels, especially when they're moving, might have given the impression of a long, undulating creature in the water. People who saw these eels from a distance, particularly in low light or misty conditions, might have mistaken them for something much more mysterious. Theory number 3 says something else. Nessie is just a series of standing waves. These happen when two boat wakes move in opposite directions, creating a big hump in the water that could look like a creature from a distance. Loch Ness enthusiasts even showed how it works, with footage from Fort Augustus, where a river meets Loch Ness. These enthusiasts had big plans to use drones with infrared cameras and special underwater microphones to search the loch. Now, Loch Ness is massive, stretching around 23 miles long and more than 700 feet deep. So, they thought they needed drones and infrared cameras to put an end to this discussion. But despite everything, they haven't found Nessie. But it's not only the Loch Ness monster that lacks scientific explanation. There have also been scores of sightings of yetis and sasquatches that no one can really explain. Folks have made movies, dreaming of finding the truth about these creatures. But, according to recent research and evidence, it looks unlikely that we'll ever find definitive evidence of their existence. Science says they can explain Sasquatch sightings, and this is how. Biologists who study wildlife using camera traps, which are set up in remote areas to capture images of passing animals, have long attempted to find elusive species. These cameras detect movement and snap pictures, providing invaluable data on the biodiversity of different ecosystems. As camera traps collect more photos over time, the number of species recorded grows. However, after a while, the number plateaus, suggesting that no new species are being detected. While it's impossible to claim 100% certainty, researchers say that after significant camera deployment, it's safe to say the likelihood of discovering new species, especially large ones like Bigfoot or the Yeti, drops significantly. Camera trap studies have been running for years in regions where these creatures are rumored to live, but so far, no conclusive evidence has surfaced. Instead, the supposed proof of Bigfoot or the Yeti often comes from blurry photos or shaky videos taken by individuals who claim to have encountered them. The scientific understanding of biology also makes the existence of Bigfoot highly unlikely. Often described as a great ape, Bigfoot would have had to evolve in North America. However, great apes evolved in Africa, and the only great ape to make it to the Americas is Homo sapiens, whose ancestors crossed the Bering Strait only about 16,000 years ago. This is far too short a time for a new species like Bigfoot to have evolved. While it may be disappointing for these mysterious creature enthusiasts, the scientific evidence points firmly toward the conclusion that creatures like Bigfoot and the Yeti are more fantasy than reality. After decades of extensive scientific research, it's safe to say that yes, science has solved the mystery of the Loch Ness monster, and it's pure fiction. So, what do you think? Well, here you are. You're getting into your submarine, feeling a bit anxious. You're going to descend hundreds of feet underwater to explore the ocean floor. So many things can go wrong. Technical issues, insane water pressure, dangerous marine monsters, mysterious eerie sounds. Wait, what? Eerie sounds so deep underwater? Yep, a strange humming noise is coming from the ocean depths. What makes it even creepier is that it only appears during dusk and dawn. This noise might act as a dinner bell, since it's likely to have a connection to massive groups of sea creatures moving up and down through the water to feed. But so far, it's just a theory. Using highly sensitive underwater microphones, researchers recorded a mysterious low-frequency hum at depths of 660 to 3,300 feet. The sound wasn't very loud, just 3 to 6 decibels above the usual ocean background noise. For comparison, when someone is whispering in a quiet library, the sound reaches 30 decibels. The underwater noise also had a puzzling or humming quality. The weirdest thing? Despite their efforts, the researchers couldn't pinpoint a single species responsible for the sound. The noise originates in a region known as the twilight zone of the ocean. This region is dark and doesn't have many nutrients, with no sunlight for photosynthesis. Life here relies on organic debris falling from above, such as deceased organisms or waste material. At the same time, while it may sound barren, the twilight zone is far from empty. A 2015 study estimated that up to 90% of the world's fish could live in this zone, including many undiscovered species. Now, back to the mysterious noise. The researchers believe the sound may be linked to the vertical migration of small marine creatures like fish, shrimp, and squid. These animals move upward toward the surface at sunset to feed on plankton and nutrients, using darkness to avoid predators. At sunrise, they return to the depths to hide. This migration, which is one of the largest animal movements on Earth, involves billions of organisms and occurs daily. Scientists suspect that the strange hum might occur during this migration, as a way for the creatures to communicate or coordinate their movements. It might also serve as a signal to indicate when it's safe for a group to go to the surface and feed. If some animals indeed use the hum to communicate, it could help us understand deep-sea life better. The Twilight Zone has always been considered a quiet environment, but such a discovery hints at complex social behaviors and interactions among its inhabitants. But it's not only the ocean that produces bizarre sounds. Earth is humming non-stop too. Unfortunately, you can't hear this soundtrack. This hum isn't from earthquakes. It's produced by subtle ongoing vibrations in the planet's crust. They're too faint for us to feel and can only be detectable with special equipment. Scientists have long known about this phenomenon called free oscillation and have recorded this persistent hum. Earthquakes are the most noticeable ground movements. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, Earth experiences about 500,000 earthquakes every year. Of those, only 100,000 are strong enough to be felt, and around 100 cause noticeable damage. But in the quieter moments between earthquakes, the planet is still constantly vibrating with smaller, unnoticeable movements. Unlike the sudden jolts of earthquakes, this hum is steady and uniform, and it's a byproduct of microseismic activity. Seismometers, tools used to record ground vibrations, can detect this sound anywhere on land. For years, researchers have been debating the origins of this hum. Some thought it came from ocean waves reaching deep into the seafloor. Others believed it was caused by colliding waves on the ocean's surface. By 2015, scientists had confirmed that both factors contributed to Earth's constant vibration. And although this hum has been recorded on land, now we also have much clearer, more detailed underwater recordings. To study the hum, researchers used spherical seismometers on the seafloor in the Indian Ocean near an island east of Madagascar. Between September 2012 and November 2013, they placed 57 free-fall seismometers across a 772 square mile area. These devices are designed to sink into the ocean floor and record even the faintest vibrations. Over the course of the 11-month study, the team filtered out noise from ocean waves and seafloor currents. They got clear, consistent signals of Earth's hum, with peaks at frequencies between 2.9 and 4.5 MHz, far below the range of human hearing, which starts at 20 Hz. The discovery of Earth's hum from the ocean floor is more than just a scientific curiosity. It gives researchers a new way to study how energy moves through the planet's crust and mantle. In any case, the world around us is filled with weird sounds that sometimes remain unexplained. One of the most intriguing examples is the bloop, an incredibly loud underwater sound recorded in 1997 by the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. The sound lasted about a minute and began as a low rumble, which then increased in frequency. It was so loud that underwater microphones detected it across an astonishing 3,000 miles. Initially, some experts thought it was the call of a massive unknown sea creature. However, NOAA later determined that the source likely had been the calving of icebergs, when giant pieces of Antarctic glaciers had been breaking off and crashing into the sea. The sound, known as Julia, a strange cooing noise, could have been produced by an iceberg scraping along the ocean floor. Another sound, dubbed train, due to its resemblance to the sound of train wheels on a track, likely originated in Antarctica's Ross Sea. Then there is upsweep, a recurring seasonal scratchy noise detected in the Pacific Ocean since 1991. Despite years of research, its exact cause remains unclear. The underwater world also has bizarre sounds that can be described as choirs of fish. Scientists studying marine life off the coast of Port Hedland in Western Australia discovered that many fish species sing in synchronized choruses at dawn and dusk, much like birds. Over 18 months, researchers recorded tons of sounds, including foghorn-like calls from black jewelfish and rhythmic ba-ba-ba sounds from batfish. These fish songs, which often involve repetitive calls that overlap in large groups, are especially important for breeding, feeding, and territorial behavior. Deeper in the ocean, NOAA researchers also explored the sounds of the Challenger Deep, the deepest part of the Mariana Trench. They used a titanium-encased microphone that managed to survive the crushing pressure, over 1,000 times the atmospheric pressure at sea level. Over 23 days, the recorder captured loads of noises, from the haunting songs of whales to the rumble of distant earthquakes. Now, we've already figured out that the ocean is filled with strange sounds, but you can also hear weird noises above ground. One of the most puzzling is the hum, a low-pitched noise reported by people in specific areas, such as Taos, New Mexico, or Bristol, England. The sound is often described as a faint engine-like drone, and its source remains a mystery. Some researchers think it might be a psychological phenomenon, where people focus on subtle background sounds they might otherwise ignore. In any case, no definitive answer has been found yet. Geological formations can sing too. Utah's Rainbow Bridge, a massive 300-foot-high sandstone arch, vibrates like a guitar string when exposed to sounds, distant earthquakes, or waves near Lake Powell. Scientists have studied its frequencies to understand how such vibrations could affect the bridge's stability over time. Interestingly, visitors to the Rainbow Bridge have reported hearing faint humming sounds too. The skies also have their own eerie noises. For centuries, people in polar regions have described faint sizzling, popping, and cracking sounds, accompanying auroras. A Finnish researcher made the first known recordings of these sounds and traced their origin to electrical discharges in the lower atmosphere, about 230 feet above the ground. These charges, caused by magnetic storms fueling auroras, produce faint sounds during calm and clear nights. Other natural phenomena, such as icebergs grinding against the seafloor or volcanic activity on the ocean floor, produce groans, rumbles, and crackling sounds that scientists study to learn about glacial movements and underwater geological activity. I myself produced many unusual sounds and rumbles, but, that's a subject for another video, or my next annual review.
Scientists found a new statue on Easter Island, inside the crater of an old volcano. They were sure they already cataloged all the moai. That's what they call those famous stone giants. But this discovery changes what we know about them. First of all, the moai were rarely alone, so we may hear about more of them in the same area. Second, it's the first moai found at the bottom of a lake. Scientists were working on a project to restore the marshland in the volcano's crater when they stumbled upon the statue. The lake that was here began to dry up in 2018. For at least 200 or 300 years, it was almost 10 feet deep, so it would be impossible for humans to build or put a statue on the bottom. Scientists think the moai are over 500 years old. It's possible that the Rapa Nui people who built them probably brought the statue here when the lake was dry in the past. The new find turned out to be slightly over 5 feet tall, which is smaller than the other statues on the island. It's a full-bodied one with recognizable features. Researchers also plan to do radiocarbon dating to find out the exact age of the statue. They don't plan to remove it from where it was found because the oldest members of the Rapa Nui community want it to stay where it is. Moai statues kept scientists puzzled for centuries. They knew that they were built as a dedication to the island's chiefs, but no one could figure out why they chose these various locations for the statues. Most of them were found along the coast of the island. Researchers from Binghamton University in New York decided to study the locations more closely and learned that it had to do with water. Easter Island has porous volcanic soil that absorbs rain easily, so there aren't enough streams or rivers and too little fresh water. Hundreds of years ago, the island's people relied on groundwater discharge to get drinking water. The water stored deep underground in rock or soil layers, called aquifers, reach a point where it flows up to the surface. When this underground water emerges near the coast, it mixes with the salty seawater, but the salt level remains low enough that the water is safe to drink. The islanders used to collect this water directly from the spots where it flowed out. And it looks like that's why they built the moai along the coast, right near their most important water source. The main bodies of most of the statues were made of volcanic tuff from a local quarry in what used to be a volcano. This material is easy to carve, but not so easy to transport. That's probably why researchers found over 300 unfinished moai back in the quarry. The rest of them stand in various locations, facing the villages. It looks like the statues were carved lying on their backs. Then, their sculptors detached them from the rock, moved them downslope, and set them in a vertical position to finish the work. When it was done, it was time to move the statue to its platform. And we're talking about moving statues that weighed around half as much as a single-story, unfurnished house without a car or any modern equipment for 3 miles. The locals must have invented some original transportation method. Scientists tried to recreate it and pulled moai replicas on wooden sleds. They thought someone would have used palm trees for that purpose, but this theory has been debunked. The most successful experiment so far was wielding ropes to rock the statue down the road in a standing position. This sounds legit, because the local Rapa Nui legends mention that the moai walked from the quarry. And of course, they needed a good road to get there. In the early 20th century, researchers Catherine Rutledge found an 800-year-old road network on the island. It was a bunch of pathways around 15 feet wide going from the quarry. She thought that those roads were ceremonial and not built just for the statues. She wasn't a famous scientist back then, so others mostly ignored the theory. Several decades later, famous Norwegian adventurer and archaeologist Thor Heyerdahl published his theory. He mentioned that the roads were there exclusively to transport the moai, and some of the statues were dropped along the way for some reason. But in 2010, researchers found that the statues reached their final destinations because they were all set on hidden platforms. The road floor was U-shaped, so pulling massive statues along them wouldn't be easy. You can still find roughly 15 miles of these roads on the island and see them from satellite images. Scientists used to believe that the Rapa Nui people made Easter Island unlivable and ruined their own civilization. But a new study that used remote sensing data and machine learning says that the island's population didn't grow too big and collapse. Instead, the islanders figured out how to live in this challenging place and kept their population small and steady for hundreds of years. Researchers found amazing rock gardens as proof for this new theory. Easter Island, or Rapa Nui, is one of the most remote places on Earth where people live. It's surrounded by the Pacific Ocean. Central Chile is 2,200 miles to the east of it, and French Polynesia is 2,600 miles to the west. The island, which is 63 square miles in size, is made entirely of volcanic rock. But the volcano stopped erupting a long time ago, so Rapa Nui's soil has lost most of the useful nutrients that lava once brought here. It's also drier than tropical islands, and its deep waters made fishing much harder for the settlers, as there's no shallow lagoons or reefs to fish in. So, the islanders came up with a smart farming method called rock gardening to survive here. They spread rocks of different sizes over the soil and planted crops like sweet potatoes and taro between the rocks. The rocks protected the plants from harsh winds and salty air and helped regulate the soil's temperature. They also slowly released minerals into the soil, so it became healthier for growing food. Some islanders still use these gardens, although they don't produce a lot of food. People in places like New Zealand, the Canary Islands, and the US Southwest have used similar techniques to grow crops in uneasy environments. While scientists are solving Easter Island mysteries, the island itself is teaching them something new about how the Earth's mantle works. For years, they thought it moved like a slow conveyor belt, carrying tectonic plates along with it. But a new study by geologists from Cuba, Colombia, and the Netherlands is challenging this idea. They used a special method called zircon dating to figure out the island's age. Zircons are tiny crystals that form when magma cools, and they have traces of uranium inside that turns into lead over time. So, the scientists measured this change to tell the age of zircons. And they were shocked when they saw that some zircons were way older than expected, around 165 million years old. The island itself is only 2.5 million years old. The scientists found that these ancient zircons came from deep inside the mantle, under the tectonic plate, by magma from earlier volcanic activity. Easter Island's volcanoes are part of a group called hotspot volcanoes, formed by hot plumes of rock rising from deep within the Earth. Normally, these plumes stay in one spot while the Earth's crust moves above them and creates a chain of islands, like Hawaii. But the discovery of ancient zircons on a younger island shows there's more going on deep underground than we thought. Research showed that 165 million years ago, a giant volcanic plateau existed where Easter Island is now. But 110 million years ago, it sank under Antarctica because of tectonic subduction. Ancient zircon minerals stayed put and didn't travel away with the mantle conveyor belt. So, it looks like the mantle near hotspot plumes doesn't flow as much as scientists used to think. It stays still. This new idea could lead to big changes in how we understand plate tectonics and how the Earth's inside moves over time.
It's true that any mysterious story loses all its charm when scientists reveal the truth. The royal intrigues of the past centuries can be solved with the help of modern technology, and fairy tales can be explained with the help of science. And now, we'll see how it happens. There is a state called Baden in southwestern Germany. Until the 20th century, it was a sovereign state. We're not going to study its history now, but let's look at an interesting case that occurred there in the 19th century. At that time, Baden was ruled by Grand Duke Karl and Grand Duchess Stephanie. On September 29, 1812, the Duchess gave birth to a son, the future heir. But unfortunately, he passed away 18 days later. A terribly sad story that spawned many rumors about the unnamed heir. People whispered among each other that an unrelated grandmother, Countess Louise Caroline von Hochberg, had replaced the heir with another kid and that the real prince was hidden from everyone in an unknown place. But why would Louise Caroline do this? Because Stephanie could no longer give birth to an heir, and one of Louise Caroline's son could get the throne. Whoa! Wow. Royal intrigues like a TV series. Yeah, being a little prince at that time was quite dangerous. Okay, Duke Karl's heir passed away or was hidden. It's unknown. Almost 16 years had passed since then, and everyone had forgotten about him. But then, out of nowhere, a mysterious guy, about 16 years old, appeared on the streets of the place that is now Nürnberg. He was just wandering around the town square. He had no documents, no money, no food. He was exhausted, wore dirty clothes, and looked hungry. He hardly spoke because of a lack of strength and could hardly write his name, Casper Hauser, and in his hand he was clutching an unsigned letter. According to the contents of the letter and the guy's words, he spent all his life in a cramped, dark dungeon from which he never came out. All this time, he was fed and cared for by an unknown benefactor. The guy had never seen their face and didn't know who they were. After that, suddenly, he found himself in the center of the city. Rumors began to spread around the city that this was the heir from Baden, the real one that was replaced. People really believe that he was the missing prince from the past and look for evidence confirming their theory. However, there was nothing but rumors about this. The guy had to wait almost 200 years before the technology that could determine his identity appeared. In the mid-1990s, genetic data showed that Casper hauser didn't belong to the Boden line, but then those tests were disproved. In general, a long series of investigations began to determine the DNA of the mysterious guy. And only recently, scientists have finally been able to put an end to this issue. They used the technology that helped study Neanderthal DNA fragments. The new method showed more accurate results. And yes, it turned out that Casper hauser's DNA didn't match the genetic code of the members of the Boden family. Scientists are confident that new technologies for analyzing genetic material will help decipher other historical mysteries. But who was this Casper hauser? Scientists don't know. It's not even known which way to look to determine his genealogy. Now it's time for a creepy story. Listen carefully to these words. We are inhabitants of the land of Saint Martin, who is regarded with peculiar veneration in the country which gave us birth. The sun does not rise upon our countrymen. Our land is little cheered by its beams. We are contented with that twilight, which, among you, precedes the sunrise or follows the sunset. Moreover, a certain luminous country is seen, not far distant from ours, and divided from it by a very considerable river. It sounds like some kind of a letter from an unknown fairy tale, right? Do you know who said that? A young brother and sister who appeared out of nowhere in a small English village in the 12th century. But the strangest thing was that the skin of these guys was green. Some people think it's true. Others are sure it's just a fairy tale. But in any case, it's a pretty strange story. The story of the green children of Woolpit. This event took place during the reign of King Stephen in the middle of the 12th century on the territory of the ancient village of Woolpit. In Old English, it sounded like wolf pit, a pit for catching wolves. In 1150, not far from this pit, a group of locals found two little kids, a boy and a girl with green skin. They couldn't explain who they were or where they came from because they spoke with a strange, unknown language. They looked nervous and scared. People brought them to the house of Sir Richard de Calne. The nobleman gave food to his young guests, but they refused to eat, despite the fact that they looked very hungry. They muttered strange words and barely spoke to Sir Richard. This went on for several days, but then they saw green beans in the garden and began to eat them greedily right out of the ground. Which one of you would consider this picture creepy enough? Seriously, it looks like a scene from a horror movie. A green boy and a girl found at a wolf pit eating beans with their bare hands right out of the ground. According to the canon of the genre, more terrible events should happen next. Livestock get sick, vegetables and fruits rot. A mysterious voice whispers in the halls, mold grows on the ceiling, and an unknown sticky liquid seeps through the walls. Ooh, what if these kids would summon some monster and drag Sir Richard into the underworld? Fortunately, none of this happened. Richard treated the kids with love and within several years taught them to eat regular food. And if you believe the records of that time, this affected their skin color. They lost their green hue and became healthier. In addition, Richard taught them to speak English, and when he questioned them about what had happened to them, they said they didn't know how they got to the village. They told him this: "We only remember that on a certain day, when we were feeding our father's flocks in the field, we heard a great sound, such as we are now accustomed to hearing at St. Edmund's when the bells are chiming. And while listening to the sound in admiration, we became on a sudden, as it were, entered, and found ourselves among you in the fields where you were reaping." You have already heard the rest of their words at the beginning of this story. It was pretty creepy. So Richard took the kids to the nearest church. No one could figure out where these kids had come from. For many years, the girl worked for Richard and then got married. Her brother, unfortunately, passed away. Almost 1,000 years have passed since these strange events, but it seems that scientists finally know the secret of the green children of Woolpit. At that time, the king was persecuting Flemish immigrants in England. Some of them probably hid near the village of Woolpit, where they raise their kids. A lack of food could have caused the green color of their skin. When they returned to a normal diet, their skin became normal. By the way, certain foods can have too much influences on how you look. For example, if you eat carrots for a long time, then your skin will have a yellowish tinge. If that brother and sister ate green beans daily, this could trigger the production of a certain green pigment. Okay, this mystery is more or less clear. But what about their unknown language? Most likely, they spoke like their parents, that is, in their native Flemish language. That's why the villagers couldn't understand them. And that strange story about the place where they lived can be explained by a rich imagination. But honestly, it would be cool if there was something really magical in this story, don't you think? In the UK, there are around 115,000 mailboxes, with some of them placed in questionable locations. Look here, we're on a deserted stretch of Caithness Moorhead, and here, just smack dab in the middle of nowhere, between the quarry and some moorland, stands a solitary mailbox. It was local teacher Chris Aitken who stumbled upon this oddity near Worth Hill, close to John O'Groats. Now, John O'Groats is a tiny village 2.5 miles northeast of Bay, in the historic county of Caithness, Scotland. The village itself is popular with tourists, but only houses around 300 people on a regular basis, and they have their own mailboxes there. So why would someone need one on a random hill? When Chris shared a photo online, someone chimed in with a theory. A while back, an entrepreneur was selling tiny parcels of land near Campster, claiming buyers became lairds with their little plots. Could this mailbox be related to that? Now, the box, proudly labeled Laird of John O'Groats, features the name Thorsten Sommer and an address in Germany. There's a PIN number on the front, but when Chris opened it, all he found was a website link. The site has pics of Sommer waving a Scottish flag and talking about his love for Scotland, even calling himself the Old Scotsman. Chris tried reaching out through the website for more info, but hasn't heard back. It might be linked to Sommer's reported purchase of a tiny patch of land. But buying Scottish laird titles is often seen as a fraud, giving no real title at all. The area around Worth Hill has had some recent police action too, after a body was found nearby. Ooh, could that somehow be connected to this mysterious mailbox too? Well, enough of the detective stories. Let's dive into some high-end fashion, shall we? So, you might have come across that funky image popping up all over the internet, claiming there's a pop-up Prada store in the Texas desert. Well, it's kind of true and kind of not. Yes, there's a shop, sort of. It showcased a whole range of Prada gear worth around $80,000. And guess what? Miuccia Prada herself hand-picked the items. But still, you couldn't buy a single thing there. No cashiers, no shop assistants. It was like the place was permanently closed. The twist? It's actually an art installation. Made entirely of biodegradable materials, it was designed to gradually blend back into nature, taking a fun jab at our current consumer culture. But why display goods you can't actually buy? Well, it's a metaphor for the elusive charm of luxury. While it was meant to decay in peace, the hype surrounding it led to a surprising amount of foot traffic and even some chaos. After trying to fend off a few would-be thieves, the artist had to admit defeat. Now it's a hotspot for photos, drawing everyone from tourists to celebrities. Right, you can find a brand purse in the desert, but can you, let's say, find a car somewhere in Welsh caves? Well, the answer is yes, and let me tell you, it's not just one car, but many of them. The Cavern of Lost Souls is a well-known abandoned car cave tucked away in Wales. Once upon a time, it was a slate mine in Ceredigion, where workers pulled out tons of slate and transported it using narrow-gauge horse-drawn tramways. But as the mining industry faded away decades ago, the mine fell into a hush. If you dare go inside, which I personally do not recommend, you'll find two large chambers, but one is particularly noteworthy. The main chamber plunges around 65 feet deep and is mostly underwater, with just a small opening above. Since the mine shut down, locals and the council have taken advantage of that opening, tossing in all sorts of unwanted stuff. You'll find everything from fridges and TVs to even whole cars piled up in one corner. What makes the Cavern of Lost Souls special is the single beam of light that breaks through. casting its glow on the twisted heap of wrecked cars and metal. The water, when hit by that light, glows a stunning turquoise green, creating beautiful reflections of the cars and cavern walls on the still surface. Every now and then, a fragment of slate falls, shattering the quiet and sending ripples across the water. There was yet another weird find in Wales. A shiny 10-foot silver monolith recently popped up on Hay Bluff in Powys, Wales, and is sparking a ton of curiosity. A local builder, Craig Muir, discovered it during his hike, and he described it as looking like it just dropped down from space. It's made of surgical steel, has no markings, and is super well crafted without visible welds. Muir's find is reminiscent of those mysterious monoliths that popped up worldwide in 2020, creating quite a buzz online. Local Richard Haynes suggested it could be some kind of scientific installation, but with national park rules against unauthorized structures, it might not be there for long. With no visible tracks around it, Muir speculated it could have been brought in by a group or even dropped from a helicopter. Now, this isn't the first strange monolith sighting. Similar ones have been spotted in Utah, the Isle of Wight, and even Glastonbury Tor, where one was humorously marked "Not Banksy." However, it could be easily him. The UK is the leading country in terms of the number of Banksy's pieces of art. As of 2023, there were 70 of them. No wonder, as he is reportedly British and was born in Bristol. The Atacama Desert in northern Chile, the driest non-polar desert on Earth, features a bizarre sight at kilometer mark 1309 on the Pan American Highway, a giant cement hand that towers 36 feet above the sand. Looks creepy, right? Well, worry not. It's not some creepy monster trying to grip you and take you to the netherworld. It's not an ancient relic from a lost civilization either. A professional sculptor created this quirky landmark back in 1992. Despite its remoteness, the hand is frequently targeted by graffiti, so local volunteers must clean it up twice a year. And by the way, it's not the only landmark of this kind. The very same sculptor also created a similar hand in Punta del Este, Uruguay, called Man Emerging to Life, and it represents the idea that a giant might be holding South America in a stone grip. Hey, works for me. Now check out this giant stone sphere hidden in the forest of Bosnia's Visoko Valley. What do you think? Is it an ancient relic or a modern art installation? Share your thoughts in the comments. But to be completely frank with you, which I always am, nobody really knows for sure. Experts think this sphere, which measures around 10 feet across, is just a naturally occurring rock formation called a concretion. These iron-rich balls get their reddish color from the high iron content and form when mineral particles stick together over time. While concretions can take on some pretty wild shapes, the exact process of how they form is still a bit of a mystery. Then there's this archaeologist, often called the Bosnian Indiana Jones, who claims it's actually a man-made artifact from over 1,000 years ago. Spherical concretions aren't unique to Bosnia, though. You can find them all over the world, like these boulders in New Zealand, massive round stones that are over 60 million years old. There are also cannonball concretions in North Dakota. And let's not forget about the man-made stone spheres crafted by the Diquis people in Costa Rica, which are perfectly shaped and arranged, definitely a testament to human creativity. So while the Bosnian sphere is super intriguing, it's probably just an ancient concretion and not a remnant of a lost civilization. Bummer. Finally, some things are so well hidden that you have to go deep down into the seafloor to get a glimpse of them. Once a hedonistic hotspot for the Roman elite, Baia was like the Las Vegas of its time, but now its ruins are submerged underwater. This resort city thrived on volcanic hot springs and attracted the likes of Nero and Caesar, who even built vacation villas there. However, in the 8th century, Baia lost a battle and was abandoned by 1500. As the water levels rose, much of the city was lost beneath the bay. Today, you can explore Baia's ancient ruins in one of the few underwater archaeological parks in the world. Hold your breath. There once was a kingdom where the ancient Egyptians traveled to buy gifts for pharaohs, sort of like an ancient shopping mall. This kingdom, named the Land of Punt, was rich in luxury goods, including gold, aromatic resins, blackwood, ebony, ivory, and exotic animals like leopards and baboons. All of these sound like great gift ideas to me. The land of Punt was an especially important trading partner for Egypt for over 1,000 years. But if you plan to go there, the bad news is that it hasn't survived to these days, and nobody knows for sure exactly where Punt was located. We only know about it from records. The most famous of them were left on the walls of the temple of Queen Hatshepsut, who had sent an expedition to Punt. Scientists have been trying to find the exact location of this rich land for over 150 years. It could have been southeast of Egypt, in a coastal region south of it along the Red Sea, Gulf of Aden, and the Indian Ocean, or it could have covered the Horn of Africa and the area across the sea in southern Arabia. Now researchers were finally able to narrow down the possible locations thanks to a study of baboon mummies. Ancient Egyptians admired baboons and even thought they were related to the deity of the moon and wisdom. One species, the sacred baboon, was often shown in wall paintings, sitting with its tail curled to the right, and was mummified in this position. Another type, the olive baboon, was wrapped up in one giant cocoon. Both types were found in the tombs of the Valley of the Kings. But if you remember geography lessons, baboons just don't wander around Egypt, so they must have been brought there through trade with other regions. Primatologists, Egyptologists, geographers, and geochemists look at the mummified baboons from two different time periods in ancient Egypt. Some were from the New Kingdom period, and others were from the Ptolemaic period. The scientists did some more hard work and analyzed tissues from 155 baboons from 75 separate places in eastern Africa and southern Arabia. Those were all areas that they thought could be the ancient land of Punt. They measured oxygen and strontium in the baboons' bodies. When animals drink water and eat plants, their teeth, hair, and bones show a geographic signature of where they've lived, thanks to these elements they contain. Scientists use a special method called isotopic mapping, and found out that the New Kingdom baboons they analyzed came from a location in Eritrea, Ethiopia, or Somalia. 5 mummified baboons from the Ptolemaic period had strontium levels that matched those found in Egypt. So, ancient Egyptians might have had a special place to breed and keep baboons, probably in Memphis, a city in Lower Egypt, not Tennessee. Meanwhile, paleontologists from New Zealand got lucky, as some boulders had split open from the tide and revealed fossils of the largest penguin that has ever lived on Earth. The scientists used laser scanners to make 3D models of the ancient penguin bones. They compared these bones to the flipper size of modern penguins and did some math as to how much the old penguins might have weighed. Today, the biggest penguins, emperor penguins, weigh between 55 to 100 pounds. Researchers think that the penguins from the past that they found weighed around 340 pounds, real giants in the penguin world. These huge flightless birds lived in the oceans around New Zealand more than 50 million years ago, after the dinosaurs went extinct. They totally took advantage of their big bodies to stay warm in the cold water. They might have even traveled the world thanks to it. And they'd scare off any predators, but they didn't have any. The asteroid that took down the dinosaurs also got rid of most big marine reptiles, and the ancestors of seals and whales were still living on land. Back in 1992, 4 farmers in China were draining water from their ponds and accidentally bumped into a ship full of gold and ancient statues worth millions. Just kidding, they actually found the Longu caves. Those are 24 big caves created by people a long time ago. Even though they are so large and well-made, no one knows who built them, why they were built, or how they were built. Experts think the caves are at least 2,000 years old, but they don't understand why these caves aren't mentioned in any historical records. All of the Longu caverns look the same and aren't connected to each other. Each cave has one entrance connected to a vertical shaft with a carved staircase. Rain and water from the surface can flow into the caves through these stairs. To manage this water, the caves have special grooves, channels, and a system to catch the water at the bottom. So it looks like the ancient builders were real pros when it came to drainage and water management. Maybe my town could learn a lesson from them, as it turns into Venice after every heavy shower. Anyway, the caverns were built below a hill, named after a bird that is one of the most respected creatures in Chinese mythology and culture. It symbolizes all the best things, like high virtue, grace, and the union of yin and yang. Scientists think there could be a connection between the caverns and the bird, but it's just a theory so far. Experts from the National Institute of Ocean Technology in India were doing their routine pollution surveys when they found some structures that looked like a city underwater. Using special sonar technology, the team found big geometric shapes on the ocean floor. They brought up different items from the site, like pottery, beads, sculptures, parts of walls, and even human bones and teeth. They thought the ruins belonged to a civilization older than the Bronze Age Indus Valley Civilization, which is the earliest urban culture of the Indian subcontinent that we know of so far. But not everyone joined in on celebrating this awesome discovery. Some archaeologists refused to believe it and thought it could be some computer tricks. And even when they saw hundreds of artifacts from the ocean floor, they said an ancient river could have brought them there from someplace else. The team that discovered the underwater site decided to prove they were right. They chose a piece of wood as their main evidence. They tested it and found it was 9,500 years old. That could be the age of the entire site. Skeptics still insist that we can't rewrite all human history because of one piece of wood. Even 23 years since the discovery, no one is sure about the final answer. This is partly because it's hard to explore the site. It's in extremely dangerous waters with strong currents and riptides. During the cool Antarctica's summer, from late November through January, geologists from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee climbed the frozen slopes of the McIntyre Promontory in the Transantarctic Mountains. High above the ice fields, they looked through the mountain's gray rocks for fossils from when the continent had green forests. By the end of their trip, the geologists found fossil pieces from 13 trees. These fossils show that the trees are over 260 million years old. This means the forest grew at the end of the Permian period before the first dinosaurs even appeared. More than 90% of all species on Earth disappeared back then, including the polar forests. These trees would have been very tough if they grew in Antarctica and could have survived. But a huge increase in gases like carbon dioxide and methane must have taken them down. This Antarctic forest is a terrific way for us to see what life was like before the extinction, and we might even understand what caused it. It also shows us how plants were different back then from those we are used to now.
There's a heavy snowstorm. The cold penetrates his bones. His legs are almost knee-deep in snow. Experienced hunter Joe LaBelle makes his way through the forest, covering his face from the headwind. Any other person would have already fallen and screamed in despair, but not Joe LaBelle. He can survive in any circumstances and always knows what to do. Right now, he's heading to one of the villages in the far north of Canada. This small settlement is located on Lake Anjikuni. The inhabitants of this village are Inuit, indigenous people of North America. Joe hasn't eaten or drunk for a long time. He needs a good sleep and a hot meal, which he hopes to get from the hospitable Inuits. Through trees and a white haze, he notices the silhouettes of tents. Smoke is coming from some houses. Joe will probably get there in time for lunch. He reaches the village, and at this moment, the wind calms down. The blizzard has ended. The hunter speeds up and goes toward the village, located along the frozen lake. It's strange, but there are no locals anywhere. Probably everyone is just sitting in their houses, waiting out the blizzard. "Hello!" Joe says loudly, but gets no response. Oh, great! Smoke is coming out of this tent. Joe knocks on the wall, but no one opens it. He knocks a few more times and goes inside. The little tent is empty. All things are in their places. There's a piece of cloth with needles and thread on the table. Firewood is smoldering in the fireplace. It seems that people have just left this place. Joe goes into the next tent and sees the same picture. All things are in their places, but there are no people. Joe walks past the tents and sees a pit where a bonfire once burned. There's a rope above it with the meat that the Inuit were cooking hanging on it. For some reason, they didn't eat it. Lake Anjikuni is part of a chain of waterways. Here, the Inuits fished and traded various goods. Usually, there are many people here, but now something has forced them to leave their homes. Why did they leave their things behind, and where did they go? There are no tracks around the village. All the sleds are in place. The Inuits have even left their dogs here, and dogs help them to hunt and ride sleighs. No one will leave warm clothes and dogs here when moving away, especially in severe weather. Joe LaBelle knows all this, so he concludes that something terrible has happened here. His body is shaking, not from the cold, but from fear. After going around the entire settlement, he finds not a single soul. Terrified, he leaves the village, heads for the nearest telegraph pole, and sends a message to the police. After a while, more and more people arrive. The police are trying to find traces of missing people and figure out what has happened, but there's nothing. Near the village, they find an empty grave. During the ceremony, the Inuits placed stones around the burial site. The rocks around the open pit lie untouched, which means it wasn't an animal that dug it up, but who or what needed it. About 30 people lived in the village, and they're all gone. Local residents from neighboring villages can't help, since they have no idea what has happened. The only thing that the police have noticed is unusual blue lights. In this area, the northern lights are a common phenomenon. People living here regularly see a glow in the starry sky, but the police have seen something else, pulsing blue lights. Also, other hunters have witnessed something similar. They say that some strange things were flying in the sky. This all happened in 1930. It's been almost 90 years since the disappearance of the village, and people have created a bunch of theories. The most popular of them is an attack of an extraterrestrial civilization. According to this theory, the blue lights in the sky that the locals and the police saw were spaceships. Some believe that one ominous night, these ships flew to the settlement and took away all the people. In addition to these sci-fi versions, there were also more realistic ones. Internet users have found out that Joe LaBelle didn't have a hunting license. Maybe he wasn't a professional and made it all up. But at that time, many hunters didn't have a license, so Joe's words may be true. But if we try to find out where all this information came from, we'll see that the primary sources were books and some newspaper articles from the 30s. But none of them can confirm that the mysterious story of Lake Anjakuni is true. Perhaps this entire story was made up. Now let's leave the snows of Canada and head for the hot plains of India. In this big country, there's one sinister village where people also disappeared without a trace. This happened in the first half of the 19th century. Still, locals avoid this place even now because they believe that invisible evil forces live there. Let's check and find out what happened to the village of Kuldara. It's located in the district of Rajasthan. To get there, you can use a taxi to get to the nearest village or city. The village is located far from other settlements. It looks deserted. There are only ruins. It looks like archaeologists have recently dug this place out of the ground and left it here. But this is not an ancient city. The village was abandoned more than 200 years ago. But up to that point, this place had been thriving. Kuldara was a large village. Local people were mostly farmers. They sold their agricultural products. And then, one night, everything changed. People abandoned their homes and stuff and ran away from there. No one knows why they did it, and no one knows where they went. Nobody has ever seen the inhabitants of Kuldara again. Apart from tourists, almost no one comes here. The locals are sure that the village is cursed and is the center of paranormal activity. If you ask residents of other nearby towns or read the information on the internet, you'll learn a couple of legends about this place. One popular version says that people left this village because of a lack of water. However, This version doesn't explain why the residents did it overnight and left their things behind. According to another version, the villagers ran away to save the daughter of the Kuldara chief. One local ruler fell in love with her and wanted to marry her. He threatened the locals with grave consequences if the girl rejected him. The ruler gave them 1 day to make a decision. The residents disagreed with such a requirement. As a sign of solidarity, they decided to leave the village together with the chief and his daughter. But if this is true, why did no one else see these people? They must have escaped to another settlement. In addition, they needed their things on the way there. The stories of Kuldara and Lake Anjakuni have one thing in common. People left a comfortable and safe place for an unknown reason. A similar story happened in Ireland with a small village on the island of Achill. About 40 simple houses made of stone and straw were located along the valley of Keem Bay. The village was mentioned in documents dated back to the 1830s as a group of small buildings. But today, there's practically nothing left of it, except pieces of walls and small mounds of ground. People from other settlements don't remember this village, but we know about it thanks to the records of travel writers. They describe the incredible beauty of this place and the village in their diaries. Students of the local archaeological school tried to find the answers. They started excavations and discovered that the villagers could have left the village because of hunger or some disease.
You're flying over the Sahara Desert in a small, light aircraft when you spot something truly weird. It seems to belong to a very different part of the world, the ocean. But what ocean can be huge enough for this monstrous sea star to dwell there? You descend and realize that it's not a sea star. It's a towering dune with a pretty unique shape, and it's not alone. From afar, these magnificent sand structures look a bit like pyramids. They have pointed tops and radiating arms. Called star dunes, they're the most complex and largest desert dunes in the world. They're the tallest of their kind, but that's not the coolest thing about them. Researchers have found similar formations on Mars and even on one of Saturn's moons, Titan. Star dunes aren't super rare, but they're especially widespread in southeastern Morocco near the border with Algeria. That's where you're flying at the moment, and the breathtaking dune you're marveling at is Lella Lalia, probably the most famous of them all, a giant 330 feet tall. Scientists believe that it formed in less than 1,000 years. How about doing some research to find out more about these unusual formations? There, I see a great spot for landing. Star dunes got their name because of their multi-armed shapes. They form in areas where winds change direction throughout the year. But even though you can find them in different places on our planet, there is just one confirmed star dune in the rock record, the collective record of Earth's development reflected in preserved rocks. The star dune in question is in Scotland, and it's ancient, from about 250 million years ago. That's all we know about super old star dunes. Probably because we don't know what to look for to identify one. Another problem: star dunes often form in remote locations, which makes them extremely difficult to study. Imagine reaching the nearest settlement, then somehow traveling who knows how many miles to the dune itself, and then slogging up several hundred feet of shifting sand. I'll pass. But you can go since you've already landed, and the dune is right here in front of you. Currently, you're in a dune field called Erg Shabi. Lucky for you, this area has long become a popular tourist stop. Look, in the distance, there are hotels and even a good road. Scientists who examined Lella Lalia before you used ground-penetrating radar to find out more about the sand formation. This equipment can detect the tiniest differences in sand grain sizes and water content under the surface of the dune. That's how you can create a picture of its interior layers. Look out! Phew, it was a close call. See this trench? The researchers dug such trenches to take samples of long-buried sands and then examined them. It's a pretty cool process. The thing is, while buried deep inside, the quartz in the sand accumulates radiation coming from natural sources within our planet. We can compare the grains of quartz to minuscule rechargeable batteries. They can store the energy they get from radiation. When researchers bring them to the laboratory, they can make the grains release that energy, which comes out in the form of light. Scientists can measure the brightness and say when the sand enjoyed sunlight for the last time. Now, when those experts who dug the trenches looked inside Lelalalia, they were shocked. The enormous formation turned out to be very young, for a dune of course. You'd expect a dune that is several hundred feet tall to be pretty old, like thousands or tens of thousands of years. But that wasn't the case. Well, at least not entirely. The upper part of the dune has turned 900 just recently. But look at the sand near the base of the dune. Yep, right there. Well, it was buried there around 12 or 13,000 years ago, representing ancient dunes in the area. Those good old dunes were active for a couple thousand years, and then something went wrong. Because for a whopping 8,000 years, the sand wasn't accumulating there. A mystery? Scientists might have an explanation. You see, the first part of this quiet period occurred during the time when the climate became warm and wet. Yep, even in the Sahara. It happened about 11,700 years ago. It was the end of the last ice age and the beginning of a new era, the Holocene. And guess what? The Sahara went green. It started blooming like your local botanic garden. Plants started popping up all over the place, stabilizing the sand. If you had visited the Sahara during that period, you wouldn't have recognized this place. But you would have likely come across humans wandering marshy landscapes and hunting for food. Researchers have found pottery fragments and stone tools on one side of Lelalalia. That's true. As sand dunes form and then shift throughout their lives, they swallow and protect ancient remnants of life. Just dig well enough and you might find something that will provide you with a window into the past. It can be ancient fossils, anything from fossilized shells and corals to prehistoric plants. Those can offer precious insights into the history of our planet and the living beings once inhabiting certain regions. Now, it might come as a shock, but in the Sahara Desert, scientists have uncovered well-preserved marine reptiles and fossilized fish within the layers of those ancient sand dunes. They are the remains from the time when the Sahara was covered with a sea millions of years ago. Anyway, it's time to leave that ancient paradise if you want to survive. 4,000 years ago, the wet period came to an end, and the Sahara dried out again. Interestingly, our dune didn't begin building up right away. For some time, sand probably blew through but didn't accumulate. Or the dune could have started growing in a different location. And it's a valid theory since scientists have discovered recently that Lelalalia shifts around 1.6 feet every year. It also accumulates about 6,400 tons of sand every year. Now, if you've been inspired by your dune trip and are now eager to explore more of them, I've got some unpleasant news for you. Unfortunately, although there might be star dunes locked in sandstones around the globe, they're super tricky to detect. The problem is, dunes are huge, but they lack a single distinguishing feature. So you'd really need large exposed beds of rock if you want to get a wide enough view to identify a star dune. On the bright side, there surely are places where it might be possible to do such research, but you should be ready to know that it might be just a set of various features that look like other dunes. But if you combine them, you'll say, it's likely to be a star dune. Comment below if you'd like to go on a trip in search of a star dune. Meanwhile, we'll continue our journey. You decide to have some rest and start climbing down the side of the dune. That's when you begin hearing it. Terrible, haunting sounds. Are there ghosts nearby? Worry not, you're safe. You might have heard of a phenomenon called singing sands. As you walk down some sandy slopes, you disturb the grains of sand. They rub against each other, producing friction that creates those eerie melodies. With each step, the sand beneath your feet comes alive in a ghostly choir of whistles and whispers. The sounds range from low hums to loud, high-pitched wails, as if an otherworldly symphony is echoing through the dunes. But of course, scientists have their own very practical explanation, attributing this phenomenon to the right atmospheric conditions combined with the unique size, shape, and moisture content of the grains. Now you've almost made it all the way to the bottom of the dune, but beware of slip faces. When a sand dune reaches a certain steepness, it develops a slope. That's the very slip face I was talking about. This slope is usually on the leeward side of the dune and sheltered from the prevailing wind. Sand grains start accumulating on the windward side, slowly creeping along the dune's gentle slope. At one point, they reach the top. Gravity takes over and they start sliding down, triggering a cascading effect. It looks like a miniature sand avalanche, and I wouldn't want to end up in its way. There's a lake in the heart of Asia that holds 1/5 of all the world's liquid freshwater. It's more than all the 5 Great Lakes have together. Even if all the rivers on our planet suddenly changed their direction and set on a mission to drain this lake, it would take them a whole year to finish the job. I'm talking about the deepest lake in the world, Lake Baikal. If you decide to go all the way down to its deepest point, prepare for a journey of almost 5,400 feet. The descent takes several hours, but the rift floor of the lake is way deeper, between 5 to 7 miles beneath the surface. It means it could be even further down than the Challenger Deep, which is the deepest known place on Earth. The amount of water it has would be enough for everyone on Earth to have something to drink for up to 50 years. This mighty giant of a lake replenishes its water completely every 383 years. Baikal has a great delivery crew of over 300 rivers and streams, bringing their waters right in. And only one river flows out of Baikal, the Angara, which is headed straight for the Arctic Ocean. Baikal isn't only the deepest, but also the oldest existing freshwater lake in the world. It formed at least 25 million years ago. It all began when the Earth's crust decided to play Tetris and created the lake and the surrounding mountains. At some point, Baikal must have been just a humble riverbed, but then tremors and fractures shook the Earth, and the distance between the shores got bigger. Water levels rose thanks to the melting glaciers. Then, several lakes formed and later merged into one. Baikal is one of around 20 lakes in the world that are older than 1 million years. And since it wasn't disturbed by glacial periods, it's a perfect research ground for scientists. Its deep-drilled core sediments can tell a lot about the climate of our planet in different periods. Since Baikal is in a rift basin with 2,000 seismic tremors per year, the lake is deepening and still growing in size. Its shores drift apart at around the same rate as South America and Africa are moving away from each other, so it has all the potential to become an ocean. Another thing Baikal has in common with the oceans is that it has water rich in oxygen, even at its lowest depths. This is one of the reasons why the fauna of the lake is so incredibly rich. It's home to over 2,500 various animals and 1,000 plant varieties. Around half of them are unique and only exist in this area, like the endemic algae, the Baikal omul fish, and the Baikal oilfish. There are also some bears, elk, and lynx living on its shores. They must appreciate the fact that the temperatures around the lake are always higher than the rest of Siberia, thanks to its huge water mass. Most Baikal dwellers prefer to stick to the bottom of the lake, but there's one brave guy you'll meet if you decide to visit. Meet the Baikal seal, also known as Nerpa. It's the only true freshwater seal in the world. Nerpa's eyes are so cute it nearly landed the part of Puss in Boots in Shrek. Nerpa in Boots sounds good to me. These huge eyes are there to help them follow their favorite pelagic fish underwater. There are other seal kinds that can handle freshwater or use it to breathe, but these cuties spend their entire lives in it. But wait, how did seals, which are supposed to be oceanic creatures, end up in a lake miles and miles away from the sea? About 400,000 years ago, during the Pleistocene era, these adventurous creatures traveled up the river and drainage systems that connected Lake Baikal to the Arctic Ocean. The ringed seal that still lives in the Arctic is believed to be the Baikal seal's closest ancestor. Today, Baikal seals are confined to their freshwater home because of the changes in waterways. And they seem to be pretty happy with their home as they can choose from a huge variety of food to eat. The seals mostly hang out in the north and central areas of the lake, but move south in the winter. The lake gets covered with ice, which they use as a chill-out zone, just like their oceanic cousins use rocks or the beach. Since at least 1969, Lake Baikal has had some mysterious ice rings pop up randomly here and there. At some point, they got so big that the astronauts even spotted them from space. The rings usually appear in late April, but can be there in January or May. Scientists couldn't crack the code on how these rings form for a while. They had all sorts of theories, and the most popular involved methane gas bubbles from the lake's depths. But then, scientists noticed that some of the rings were in shallower waters, where gas emissions don't happen. So, an international team of scientists decided to solve the mystery. They traveled to Lake Baikal, drilled holes in the ice, and dropped sensors into the water. In 2016, when they started the research, they heard that 2 vans had gotten stuck in the mysterious ice rings. Once they had analyzed the data from the sensors, it turned out that the secret behind the rings was warm eddies flowing clockwise under its ice cover. The currents were less intense in the center of the eddies, so the ice above them was thicker at the edges. The waters of the lake are so clear that you can see some extremely deep parts up to over 130 feet down. This is thanks to the surrounding mountains that send off melting ice right in. Plankton that live in the lake also helps clean the floating debris. When this crystal clear water freezes, it forms an unusually thick and see-through layer of ice. The wind likes to play sculptor on Baikal and creates one-of-a-kind pieces of art here. It picks up water, which, of course, freezes into the most unusual designs. Frozen bubbles and icicles you've never seen before. The location and geography of the lakes and the cycles of melting and refreezing create the perfect conditions for this ice workshop. And you can even see rocks that seem to be floating. The bottom of the rock freezes to the surface of the ice. Then, the strong winds wear away the surroundings, leaving a perfect pedestal for the rock. If you think the floating rocks look eerie, how about Baikal's version of the Loch Ness monster? The local Buryat people have a legend about the water dragon master that lives in the lake. A dragon is believed to be the most powerful creature living on Earth in Asian mythology. They believe there are 4 dragons living in the 4 seas, each responsible for one of the cardinal directions. Baikal is the North Sea in this story. The image of this dragon is supposedly etched in ancient petroglyphs on the cliffs of Baikal. There's also a hefty stone slab that looks like a monument dated back to somewhere between the 3rd and the 9th century BCE, depicting a mysterious water monster. Imagine the stories this stone could tell, echoing the whispers of a bygone era and leaving us to unravel the enigma of the Baikal cliffs. The legend says that a local warrior was chasing the dragon. He finally reached the largest Baikal island of Alkan. He was ready to face and defeat the dragon, but the beast turned into a beautiful girl, and they got married. That's one unusual twist to a classic defeat the dragon and take the girl story. So, local legends describe that dragon as a giant sturgeon with an almost gator-like snout and armored body. In reality, the mythical monster must be one of the many huge fish living in the lake. They can afford to grow to several feet in length thanks to the high levels of oxygen in the water. Beluga sturgeon can weigh several thousands of pounds, lives up to 50 or 60 years, and never stops growing.
It was the beginning of the 20th century, and 2 rivals, Robert Scott and Roald Amundsen, set on their expeditions to become the first people in history to reach the South Pole. The race wasn't easy, and it ended tragically for Scott. Amundsen has won and set his tent on the pole before his rivals. A member of Scott's expedition known as Terra Nova, British geologist Thomas Griffith Taylor, not only survived the harsh conditions, but also made an unexpected discovery. He found a waterfall of what appeared to be blood at the rocky base of the glacier, which now has his name, in 1911. It took scientists more than a century to figure out what is behind the eerie coloring. A team of American scientists journeyed to Taylor Glacier with powerful electron microscopes to analyze its contents. Previous studies had scratched the surface of the Crimson Enigma, but no one had previously done a full-scale analysis of its mineralogical makeup. These researchers unleashed a whole arsenal of analytical equipment and spotted little iron-rich nanospheres. These teeny-tiny particles, 1/100th the size of human red blood cells, originate from ancient microbes. They flourish abundantly in the meltwaters of Taylor Glacier. These nanospheres are jam-packed with iron, silicon, calcium, aluminum, and sodium, forming a unique composition that paints the subglacial water a vivid shade of red. These nanospheres don't have the usual crystalline structure found in minerals, which is why previous detection methods failed to spot them. Taylor Glacier's icy depths harbor an ancient microbial community that has thrived in isolation for thousands or possibly even millions of years. This discovery could help us in the search for life outside of Earth. Dr. Ken Levy, a research scientist at Johns Hopkins University, has some impressive expertise in planetary materials and the analysis of Martian samples. He decided to find out what would happen if a Mars rover landed in Antarctica. Could it figure out what makes bloodfalls so mesmerizingly red? So, researchers treated bloodfalls as a simulated Martian landing site. They used techniques inspired by the rovers exploring the red planet. The samples they collected were sent to Johns Hopkins processing facilities. There, Livy unleashed the power of transmission electron microscopy and revealed the enigmatic nanospheres. He made the conclusion that our current methods of analyzing other planets' surfaces with rovers fall short. They can't unravel the true nature of environmental materials, especially on chilly planets like Mars. These materials might be super tiny and non-crystalline, throwing off our detection methods. To truly grasp the essence of rocky planets, we'll need transmission electron microscopes. Strapping one onto a Mars rover isn't feasible yet, but it could mean a start of a new era in space exploration. Have you ever seen a waterfall on fire? Every February, when the stars align just right, Horsetail Fall in Yosemite National Park gets a sensational makeover. As the sun sets, its rays hit the waterfall at the perfect angle, transforming it into a blazing display of vibrant orange and red hues. We don't know exactly who and when discovered this natural miracle. The original valley dwellers may have known about it, but they kept it to themselves. It wasn't until 1973 that photographer Galen Rowell captured the first known photo of the waterfall, bringing it into the limelight. Since then, the firefall has become a global sensation, spreading like wildfire on social media and drawing crowds from far and wide. This magnificent cascade draws hundreds of spectators every year, but they can only see the show under certain conditions. First things first, Horsetail Fall needs a flowing stream. If there's not enough snowpack in February, the waterfall won't have enough water to create the magic. The temperatures must be warm enough to melt the snowpack during the day. If it's too chilly, the snow will stay frozen, and the fiery spectacle won't ignite. Second, we need a clear western sky at sunset. Those sunbeams need a straight path to hit Horsetail Fall and make it come alive. And since the weather in Yosemite is ever-changing, clouds can magically clear up just in time for the show. If all the conditions are just right, you'll witness the Yosemite Firefall in all its glory for about 10 minutes. The mystery of the sailing stones in California's Death Valley National Park has puzzled scientists for years. Heavy stones seem to have a mind of their own and move across Racetrack Playa, a dried-up lakebed. They leave behind a trail on the cracked mud. There were all kinds of theories to explain this phenomenon, from magnetic fields or dust devils, which are strong whirlwinds, to mischievous pranksters. No one has actually witnessed these rocks in action, which only added to the mystery. In 2006, a NASA scientist named Ralph Lorenz entered the scene. He was studying weather conditions on other planets, but he couldn't resist the allure of Death Valley and those elusive sailing stones. He had an eureka moment while tinkering at his kitchen table with a Tupperware container. Lorenz filled the container with water, leaving a small rock poking out, and chucked it in the freezer. Then he placed this icy construction in a big tray of water with sand at the bottom and gently blew on it. The rock began to glide across the water, leaving a trail in the sand. Lorenz had been studying how ice can make big rocks float and move along tidal beaches in the Arctic Sea. Applying this knowledge, he and his research team figured out that, under certain winter conditions in Death Valley, enough water and ice could form to make the rocks float across racetrack playa in a light breeze. And as they glided, they left their mark in the muddy terrain. The River of Five Colors, Cano Cristales in Colombia, has the unofficial title of the most beautiful river in the world. For most of the year, it looks like any other regular river. The real magic happens between the wet and dry seasons, when the water level is just perfect. This unique river floor is lined with a special plant, and when the conditions are right, it bursts into a dazzling display of colors. Think vibrant reds, stunning yellows, and lush greens, all mingling with the blue water. It's like stepping into a living rainbow with 1,000 shades in between. This phenomenal display only lasts for a few weeks, from September through November. During Colombia's wet season, the river flows too fast and deep, covering up the river floor and denying the plant the sunlight it needs to turn red. And in the dry season, there's simply not enough water to support the vibrant life in the river. So you have to catch it at just the right time. The reason behind Maldivian beaches glowing in the dark at night isn't a mystery, but it doesn't make them any less impressive. It happens thanks to the bioluminescent plankton. These tiny creatures are like little underwater disco balls, emitting a cool blue glow when they are agitated or on the move. Imagine walking along the shoreline and leaving behind glowing footprints. You can even take a night swim amongst these magical plankton. Researchers have discovered that their bioluminescence is actually a clever defense mechanism against predators. When these microorganisms flash their little blue lights, it disorients and surprises their attackers. The plankton produces this light using a chemical called luciferin. These enchanting plankton can appear at any time of the year. The best chances of seeing them in all their glowing glory are from June to December. During this period, there's a higher volume of plankton in the seas of the Maldives, creating the perfect conditions for a luminous show after the sun sets and the night sky takes over. You'll only witness the magic of bioluminescent plankton when tidal currents bring them close to the shore in large numbers. It's hard to predict exactly when this spectacular show will happen, so make sure to do your research and prepare to take photos with a high ISO to capture it, exactly like it looks in travel catalogs. You have heard about Nikola Tesla. You have definitely heard about the Great Pyramids in Egypt. But what if I told you that Tesla may have probably uncovered the ancient mysteries surrounding the pyramids? Wait, what? Is this a crossover episode? Nope. It's highly probable that the secrets of the pyramids are hidden in plain sight. But first, let's recap what we know about the pyramids. What's so mysterious about them? I mean, they are just old quirky buildings, aren't they? One of the biggest questions is how they were built. Some people think that the pyramids were created by people using only their hands and muscles. But others think that there might have been some kind of crazy energy source that we don't know about yet. Like, what if aliens helped out or something? Just kidding. But this idea of some unknown energy source being used to build the pyramids has been around for ages. Even in old texts, like the pyramid texts, it talks about how the gods gave us something to build a great power. So maybe there was something really powerful and mysterious going on back then? Who knows? Back in the early 1900s, he got obsessed with the Great Pyramids of Egypt. He read numerous books about these ancient structures and was blown away by how much energy they seemed to have. At that time, not many people knew much about electricity, and Tesla started to wonder if there was some kind of advanced tech hidden in the pyramids. He had an idea that the power of the pyramids had to do with electromagnetism, and he put a lot of time and effort into trying to figure out the mystery. Tesla had some pretty unusual theories about the Great Pyramids. He thought that they could actually store and move electricity, which could then be used to power up the areas around them. He also had this theory that the pyramids were built using some kind of crystal energy. He believed that the chambers inside the pyramids could have these super powerful crystals that could control the electromagnetic fields. But that's not all. Tesla also had this idea that the materials used to make the pyramids had properties that allowed them to trap energy from the sun and the moon. And not just a little bit of energy. He thought that the pyramid could actually create this massive energy field that could light up whole cities or even brighten up dark places. He thought that the pyramids could be used as giant power plants to generate electricity and run machines. Tesla even believed that the pyramids were somehow linked to cosmic energy, which could be used for spiritual enlightenment and healing. How very new age of him. Anyway, Tesla wasn't just pulling these ideas out of thin air. He was seriously into studying everything he could about the pyramids, from ancient artifacts and texts to hieroglyphs and drawings. And he came up with this idea that the pyramids were designed to be energy amplifiers, and some kind of unknown energy source was used during their construction. Some people thought Tesla was eccentric for coming up with these theories, but his ideas have actually had a huge impact on the way we think about the pyramids today. Researchers and scholars have been digging into his theories for years and using them to uncover some of the biggest mysteries surrounding these ancient structures. For example, recently scientists have used theoretical physics to investigate how the Great Pyramid of Egypt would react to certain radio waves. They found out that if the radio waves were a certain length, the pyramid could concentrate the energy inside its rooms and focus it under its base. The scientists did lots of calculations to figure this out. They first thought about what radio wavelengths would work best. Then they made a model of how the pyramid would react to the waves. They figured out how much of the energy from the waves would get absorbed or spread out. Lastly, they checked how the energy would move around inside the pyramid when the waves hit it. To help explain all of this, the scientists used something called multipole analysis. This is when you take a complicated object and break it down into simpler parts. Then you can see how each part interacts with the energy that's coming in. It's like taking apart a puzzle to see how each piece fits together. The researchers are interested in how all of this can be used in the future. They want to make really tiny particles that can do the same thing as the pyramid, but with light. By changing the size, shape, and the material of these particles, they can control how the light moves around them. This can be really useful for things like making tiny sensors or super efficient solar cells. The scientists had to make some guesses when they were doing their research. They assumed that there weren't any hidden spaces inside the pyramid, and that the material used to build it was all the same. But even with these guesses, they still made some pretty impressive discoveries. But the pyramid study is not the only proof that Tesla was ahead of his time. There are more Tesla's projects that seemed unrealistic at the time, but that scientists and enthusiasts reevaluate and try to implement today. Let's talk about Tesla's most ambitious project, the Wardenclyffe Transmission Tower. Back in 1900, Tesla was already a big shot when it came to electrical engineering in America. People were blown away by his amazing inventions and the fact that he managed to outdo Thomas Edison in the Battle of Currents. However, Tesla wasn't content to rest on his laurels. He decided to embark on his most ambitious project yet, the transmission tower at Wardenclyffe. It was built between 1901 and 1905, and it was based on one of Tesla's breakthrough ideas. He had a vision to make the impossible possible by creating a global wireless communication system. It would use Earth itself as a conductor, transmitting music, news, stock market reports, secured military communications, and even facsimile images. Does it sound familiar? Right, it sounds just like the internet that we use today, only without the use of any wires. But Tesla had a much bigger dream in mind, to transmit power wirelessly. He already proved that high-frequency signals could be sent without any wires using his Tesla coil transformers, and this sparked his obsession with wireless energy transmission. His vision was to not only transform the way we communicate, but also to find a way to transfer power currents globally by tapping into the Earth's natural energy. Tesla believed that there was an abundance of free energy all around us that could be used for humanity's benefit. In 1899, he conducted some top-secret experiments and got convinced that it was possible to transmit electrical power through the Earth's upper atmosphere. This is actually how the Wardenclyffe Tower was created. It was supposed to be the prototype station for a network of towers all over the globe that would provide the whole world with wireless energy. Unfortunately, Tesla didn't have the resources or the patience of his investors to bring this project to fruition. It ran into all sorts of financial problems and roadblocks, and in 1917, the unfinished tower was finally torn down for scrap metal to pay off Tesla's mounting debts. Now it remains a sad reminder that even the greatest minds can sometimes fall short of their dreams. The original red brick laboratory, however, is still there, and it is the only Tesla lab that has survived. Fun fact, in 2017, a film crew made a crazy discovery. They used ground-penetrating radar to explore the area around Wardenclyffe, and they found a whole series of tunnels stretching for hundreds of feet underneath the site. Nobody knows exactly what these tunnels were used for, but people have been speculating for years that they were part of Tesla's grand plan. Wardenclyffe, of course, is a major landmark for Tesla enthusiasts from all over the world. Who knows? Maybe someone will finally crack the mystery of the tunnels one day. But even if they don't, the legacy of Tesla and his amazing ideas lives on.
Remember that mysterious wow signal astronomers have been wondering about for the past 40 years? Well, buckle up, because we have some interesting news about it. For those of you who may not know, the wow signal was a radio sound detected back in 1977 by an astronomer while working at the Big Ear radio telescope in Ohio. The signal was so unique and intense that the man scribbled "wow" in the margin of the data printout, and the name stuck ever since. But what made the wow signal so special? Well, for one thing, it was never detected again. Despite astronomers pointing their telescopes to that same region of space numerous times over the years, the signal never reappeared. It was like a cosmic one-hit wonder. Now, for decades, scientists have been trying to decipher the mystery behind the wow signal. Was it a message from an intelligent civilization living outside our planet? Or was it just some random cosmic noise? Years ago, one study claimed that the wow signal was caused by a comet named 266P Christensen. It was passing through that same region of space back in 1977, and its hydrogen could have emitted a radio signal that just happened to be in the same frequency as the wow signal. This information was soon dismissed by specialists who claimed comets don't emit such radio waves. Another theory concerning the wow signal was that it might have come from a sun-like star. This was based on the idea that the signal was indeed caused by a natural phenomenon, not by little green creatures wandering in space. This star is found in the constellation of Sagittarius at a distance of 1,800 light-years. Now, this distance might sound like a long way, but in terms of the vastness of space, it's practically next door. It was promising because it had some interesting features too. It was very similar to our sun in terms of temperature, luminosity, and size. Sadly, after studying this sun twin star a bit more, scientists couldn't pinpoint the wow signal to it with complete certainty. There may be other stars in the same area that could have emitted the signal. We just don't know for sure. So, what does this mean for the search for life outside our planet through the wow signal? Well, it means that we're back to square one for the most part. We still don't know what caused the wow signal, and we don't know if it was caused by an intelligent civilization or a natural phenomenon. One of the ways that astronomers are searching for intelligent life in the universe is by looking for technosignatures. These are signs of technology that we can detect from here on Earth, which could indicate advanced activity in space. They couldn't be explained by natural phenomena. Some examples of technosignatures include laser emissions, radio signals, or signs of megastructures. Today's outer space playlist doesn't end with the wow signal. Get ready to shake those hips and groove to the beat, because we're about to discover black holes and the funky sounds they make. Now you may be wondering, do black holes make sounds? Well, it looks like they do, and it's like a cosmic symphony. First off, let's talk about what a black hole is. It's a spot in space where gravity is so strong that nothing, not even light, can escape its pull. Think of it as a cosmic vacuum cleaner that sucks up everything in its path. Even though black holes don't emit any light, they can still give off some serious vibes. Scientists have been studying these vibes, or sounds, for years, using special instruments to pick up on their cosmic tunes. So, what does a black hole sound like? Well, imagine a bass guitar mixed with the sound of a giant burp. Weird, I know. This sound from black holes comes from the gas and dust swirling around them. As the material gets sucked in, it heats up and emits X-rays, which can be detected by our instruments. These X-rays are like the notes in a song, and they can tell us a lot about what's going in and around the black hole. But here's the craziest part. Scientists have found that different black holes have their unique tunes. It's like they have their own cosmic DJ spinning tracks for the universe to groove to. After studying colliding black holes, scientists have figured out that some are super chill and mellow, while others are wild and crazy with beats that'll make your head spin. Who knows, maybe one day we'll figure out a way to tap into that cosmic beat and use it to power our spaceships. If we can turn sound waves into electricity here on Earth, who's to say we can't do the same thing in space? The mysterious bloop sound baffled scientists for ages too, only this one came from a completely different location, from deep within our Earth's waters. Picture this, you're chilling on your couch minding your own business, when suddenly you hear a loud, eerie noise coming from your speakers. Well, that's sort of what happened to a group of scientists back in 1997 when they stumbled upon the infamous bloop sound. Now, I know what you're thinking. Bloop? That's not very scary. But let me tell you, this sound was no joke. It was a deep, low-frequency noise that lasted for about a minute. And it was picked up by underwater microphones nearly 3,000 miles apart. Naturally, the scientists were like, what on earth is making this noise? Fast forward a few years and the internet is overwhelmed with theories about what could have caused the bloop. Some people thought it was a giant sea monster, while others speculated it was some sort of weird civilization spaceship lurking in the depths of the ocean. And of course, some believed it was just a glitch in the recording equipment. Despite all the speculation, the mystery of the bloop remained unsolved for years. But back in 2005, scientists finally revealed the true culprit behind the spooky sound. Turns out, it was just an iceberg. When icebergs break off from glaciers and float around the ocean, they can make some pretty weird noises. And the bloop was nothing more than the sound of an iceberg cracking and shifting around. Just because we know the cause of the bloop doesn't mean it's any less fascinating. In fact, it's pretty amazing that a sound like that could travel thousands of miles and still be audible. Plus, the fact that it took scientists years to figure out what caused it, it just goes to show how much we still have to learn about our planet. No playlist is complete without a sad, heartbreaking song. And speaking of that, have you heard of the loneliest whale in the world? It's a fascinating story that starts back in 1989, when American specialists were looking for submarines. Instead of submarines, though, they stumbled upon a whale that had a uniquely high-pitched voice, which earned it the title of the loneliest whale. Why is it called the loneliest whale? Well, most blue whales speak at frequencies between 10 and 40 Hz, but this whale's voice is at a frequency of 52 Hz, which is a low bass note to human ears. Since it has a different voice than other blue whales, some scientists believe that it was unable to communicate with other whales. It's also believed that this whale may be a hybrid whale, with one parent from a different whale species. This could cause a different body shape and a different call, which could explain its unique voice. Recent research suggests that the loneliest whale may not be so lonely after all. Many peculiar whale calls have been detected, And some studies suggest that groups of whales living in particular regions have distinct dialects of whale songs that often differ in frequency. To add to the intrigue, later recordings have found that the loneliest whale is now changing its tune. The whale's call has been getting deeper for several years. Maybe it's not so lonely after all and has some whale friends to hang out with.
Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, Chupacabra, Mothman, and other similar creatures are called cryptids. The pseudo or fake science that studies them is cryptozoology. But every year, real science refutes the existence of these beasts. So let's find out how some cryptid myths have been debunked. Let's start with one of the most famous cryptids, Yeti and Bigfoot. These two creatures are almost the same, but legends about them appeared in different parts of the world. Yeti is a big guy with white fur. Stories about it appeared in Nepal several hundred years ago. Bigfoot is a mythical creature of North America, specifically the Pacific Northwest, and legends about it appeared in the 20th century. Many people believe in the giant furry creature similar to a bear and a primate at once. Still, no one has ever presented objective evidence that this beast exists. You can find many photos of footprints that allegedly belong to Bigfoot or Yeti, but most are hoaxes. People like not only to believe in fantastic stories, but even to create them. So, to create traces of Bigfoot, someone made a large footprint of clay that had similarities with the human foot. The hair and DNA samples found in the woods, besides the prints, were of artificial origin. It was synthetic, or the hair of deers, bulls, and bears. Oh, and do you remember that famous video of poor quality with a Bigfoot? Perhaps the film was real and wasn't edited, but the creature caught on camera was probably an actor in a gorilla costume or something. Among all the animals, the American black bear is a perfect candidate for the role of Bigfoot. This giant beast is covered with fur and can stand on its hind legs. But the most exciting thing is that scientists have identified a pattern between Bigfoot reports and the black bear population. It turned out that people saw Bigfoot in the places where many bears live. Now, a similar story happened to Yeti. A group of scientists studied DNA hair samples that, as people said, belonged to the Yeti. They discovered that all these samples belong to rare species of bears and even dogs. This study may disappoint the fans of the fantastic monster, but it pleased the scientists. They got the information that can give a more detailed idea of the bear's evolution. Still, I'm sure there will be more Bigfoot sightings yet again. Reports of the next fantastic monster appeared in 1987 in Puerto Rico. An unknown creature entered farms to feast on goats, chickens, and other animals. Many said they had seen an animal similar to a dog, a reptile, and a rodent with an elongated face, large fangs, and scales. Some claimed they had seen a monster with smooth skin, little to no hair, and an unpleasant smell. No, it wasn't me. People called it the chupacabra. Every night, it would attack livestock, and farmers couldn't catch it. At least that's what the newspapers said. It was partly true. The residents did see a scary creature in the barns, but was it something fantastic? One scientist from the University of Michigan could solve the mystery of the chupacabra. He said that the monster was probably an ordinary coyote. More precisely, several coyotes having scabies. In Puerto Rico, some ticks climb on animals and cause itching. Because of this itch, coyotes lose their hair. This explains why many people saw bald monsters. The darkness, the fear of the unknown, and people's imagination turn the frightened animal into a monster. With a worse case of ticks, coyotes began to emit an unpleasant smell. Their skin loses its fur and becomes thicker. As a result, the animal turns into a chupacabra. It loses strength, so it chooses easier prey for hunting, livestock. This thing appeared in the middle of the night in the dense forests of West Virginia. It's a tall person with huge wings and glowing red eyes. You probably know it as the Mothman. People first heard about it in November 1966. In the small town of Point Pleasant, two young people were walking in the woods and saw a terrible monster, a massive guy with red eyes and 10-foot wings. They ran out of the woods and immediately called the sheriff. After that, the police began to comb the forest. A local newspaper wrote an article about the mysterious monster. From that moment on, rumors about the Mothman started to spread throughout the state and the U.S. It became as popular as Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster. People made a festival in Mothman's honor, and Hollywood created a horror film about it. But unlike most of the cryptids, Mothman has no photos or videos. Myths and legends keep this creature popular. By the way, the residents of Point Pleasant benefit as their town has become a place of attraction for Mothman lovers. People make good cash selling souvenirs with the image of the monster. Tourists spend money on hotels and excursions and contribute to economic growth. What's the point of destroying all the myths about Mothman if it's that profitable? Nevertheless, the legend appeared somehow, and a guy named Jonathan Gitter decided to discover its origin. He studied the first newspaper articles about the Mothman and read many books. Almost all of them were written by cryptozoology enthusiasts. All the documentaries and articles didn't contain anything scientific either. However, Jonathan learned an exciting story about Point Pleasant. At the beginning of the 20th century, factories for producing harmful substances worked here. When the plants closed, the leftover substances began to pollute the environment. Perhaps some part of the story about the Mothman is connected with people's idea of polluted nature. The context of the town's history gave birth to Mothman in people's heads. In addition, in 1967, there was a big disaster in the city. The Silver Bridge, the main entrance road to Point Pleasant, collapsed. The tragedy brought a lot of grief, and some residents believe that Mothman was involved somehow. Our next cryptid lives in the water. A monster called Steller's sea ape is less famous than other pseudo-real creatures, but its appearance is quite specific. So imagine an oblong, thick body about 6 feet long, just under the height of an NBA star. The monster is covered with thick reddish-colored hair with a white stripe on its back. The head of Steller's sea ape looks like a dog's. Pointed ears look up, and long whiskers hang from both sides of the lips. Stories about it appeared thanks to naturalist George Wilhelm Steller. According to his description, the ape resembled a walrus or seal, but pictures on the internet show something between a mermaid and a cat. A naturalist saw this creature during the Great Northern Expedition aboard the ship St. Peter in the 1740s. On this maritime expedition, he met many animals, including the sea ape, and described them in his diary. He was a well-known naturalist, so many believed in the existence of this creature. Some believe that the naturalist described ocean seals. Others think that the sea ape was the captain of the St. Peter, Vitus Bering. Steller had a conflict with the captain, so he could jokingly describe him as the sea ape. According to some records, Vitus Bering had a long drooping mustache and a large belly. So, the most popular cryptid in the world has a chance to get out of the field of cryptozoology and get into real science. This is the Loch Ness Monster. It makes no sense now to try and tell truth from fiction among thousands of records and messages about it, but hey, let's look at a recent scientific study. According to rumors and guesses, Nessie is a descendant of an ancient marine dinosaur, a plesiosaur. But this theory was quickly refuted because plesiosaurs lived only in saltwater. However, a group of paleontologists discovered fossils of this reptile in a 100-million-year-old river system, and this system was freshwater. That means that plesiosaurs could have lived in the giant lake Loch Ness. Perhaps one of their descendants has been able to survive to this day. So go ahead, dip your toe in the water.
Strange things occur in the cold waters of Antarctica. One of these things happened to a ship called Jenny. It was a small schooner whose history began in 1822. The boat and its crew set sail and disappeared a year later. For 18 years, the ship was considered sunk. People forgot about it, but in 1840, the vessel reminded the world of itself. That year, the whaling ship Hope sailed through the Drake Channel in Antarctica. The crew members noticed a ship among icebergs. It was the schooner Jenny. It was floating slowly in the dark, with no signs of life. The captain of the Hope, Mr. Brighton, gave the order to approach the mysterious vessel. They thought it was some creepy ghost ship, but as they came closer, they noticed crew members on the deck. The sailors of the Hope called out to them, but received no answer. This time, it became clear that something terrible had happened to the Jenny. When Brighton boarded, he realized that the Jenny crew members weren't missing. They were here. Frozen people stood like statues. Brighton went down to the lower deck and found the captain. He was sitting frozen at the table, holding a pen. Brighton looked at the logbook. The last record was made on May 4th, 1823. The captain wrote that he was the only living member of the crew. They spent 71 days without food. It seemed that the ship got lost in the sea because its captain went off course or sailed into an iceberg, but no one knew for sure. After that, nobody ever saw the Jenny again. According to rumors, the crew of the Hope abandoned the frozen ship and left it to drift in the cold waters. According to other rumors, this whole story is fiction. The story of the Jenny was described in a German magazine in the middle of the 19th century. Still, there was no further evidence of the ship's existence. Already in our time, Cambridge University decided to explore the case of the Jenny. The researchers discovered that one of the crew members of the Hope, who didn't disclose his name, told someone the legend of the frozen ship. Someone shared the story with another guy, and it was published in a German magazine called Globus. And that's all. There was no other evidence. One of the most famous ghost ships was the Mary Celeste, and there's no doubt about its existence. The history of this vessel was documented in court. People wrote about it in newspapers, but the most exciting thing is that the ship continued to be used even after 10 people disappeared from its deck. The history of the Mary Celeste began in Canada in 1861. When it was first built, the ship was called the Amazon. It changed captains several times, and it also hit some rocks. The boat was sold, bought, then sold again, repaired, and sailed under the name Mary Celeste. In 1872, it had a new captain, Benjamin Briggs. He was a decent, brave man with a lot of experience in navigation. He had a beloved wife, a daughter, and a son. When he went on his last voyage, he took his wife and daughter with him, and his son stayed in America. In November of 1872, the Mary Celeste sailed from the port in New York with 10 people on board and disappeared. 8 days later, another ship, the Dei Gratia, also left New York and followed the same route. Dei Gratia's captain, David Morehouse, noticed the Mary Celeste and immediately realized something was wrong. The ship was moving too freely, as if no one was controlling it. The captain tried to contact the crew members, but no one answered him. Then, together with other sailors, he climbed aboard the Mary Celeste. The ship was in good condition. There was no damage. The hold was slightly filled with water, but it could be easily pumped out. Everything seemed fine, but one lifeboat was missing. The crew members' valuables were in their cabins. The cargo was in the hold. The supplies of water and food were untouched. Judging by the records in the logbook, the ship was caught in a storm, but it was not too strong. Other ships also sailed through this storm, but nothing bad happened to them. The last record was dated November 25th, and it claimed that everything was fine. The sails of the Mary Celeste were slightly damaged, but perhaps it happened after the crew had disappeared. The whole ship was in excellent condition, but what made the people leave it? Part of the crew of the Dei Gratia stayed on board the Mary Celeste to bring it to dry land. Everything went well. They delivered the ship to the closest port. Next, the captain of the Dei Gratia appeared before the court and told about what had happened. However, the prosecutor and the judge didn't want to believe in the story of the Mary Celeste. They were sure the captain got rid of the ship's crew to get money for its cargo. According to the maritime laws of that time, if you found a ghost ship with valuable cargo, then a substantial part of this cargo belonged to you. So, many people thought that David Morehouse decided to earn some money. This version seemed to be more valid than the one about the mysterious disappearance of 10 people. Fortunately, no one accused the captain of committing a crime. They thanked him for his service and gave him a monetary reward. However, his reputation was damaged, which greatly affected his career, as many believed he attacked the crew of the Mary Celeste. But even after this terrible case, trial, and investigation, the story was not over. The Mary Celeste was still an expensive and efficient vessel. It sailed several times, but then one captain crashed it into the reefs to get insurance. The court revealed this deception and accused the captain of intentional property damage. The story of the Mary Celeste became famous all over the world. People began to build their theories, realistic and not. Someone believed the ship had sailed through the Bermuda Triangle, but this version was quickly refuted, as the route of the Mary Celeste passed thousands of miles away from the Bermuda region. Did the Kraken or another giant monster attack the ship? Nope. Since the boat was found in almost perfect condition, there were no signs of a struggle. One of the most popular versions was that the crew of the Mary Celeste stole some valuable cargo and sailed to Spain on the rescue boat. However, those who knew Captain Benjamin Briggs said he was a good, honest man. Besides, he had a son in New York, and Briggs would never leave him. A more thorough investigation revealed that a series of accidental circumstances could have caused the disappearance of the ship's crew. Before its last voyage, the vessel delivered coal. Perhaps the pump intended for pumping water got clogged with coal after that, and when the ship got into a storm, the hold filled with water and the pump broke. The captain couldn't understand the amount of water because numerous barrels in the cargo hold blocked the view. Benjamin Briggs assumed it was dangerous to stay on the ship during a storm, so he evacuated with the passengers on a lifeboat. Perhaps they were close to land and decided to sail there, but the storm intensified and overturned the boat. Also, one record in the log journal said that the chronometer was faulty. It was a device that helped to determine your location at sea using longitude. Briggs got lost and didn't know which way to sail. The storm was strong, and he couldn't determine whether the ship would sink. Perhaps Briggs decided to leave the ship in a rescue boat when he saw the coast of the Azores. The uniqueness of this ghost ship case is that, unlike many others, you can investigate it yourself. There's a lot of information about the Mary Celeste on the internet. There are documentaries and research articles. Perhaps you'll be able to notice something that others haven't seen and solve the mystery of the disappearance of 10 people.
These days, we discover exoplanets that are thousands of light years away. We descend to the ocean's depths and conquer the highest peaks. We study quantum physics and build quantum computers. But for some reason, we still don't know about these strange lights in the night sky. Some of them are still unexplained. Some may turn into unexpected discoveries, and others are large-scale falsifications. Let's start with the most mysterious burning balls. These lights regularly appear near the town of Marfa in West Texas. These basketball-sized lights suddenly appear out of nowhere in the middle of the night. They flicker, split into two parts, and take off into the sky several times a year. For several generations, people have seen blue, white, yellow, and other lights. The existence of these lights is not some legend, but a fact confirmed by scientists, but they still need to explain its nature. A local shepherd first noticed Marfa lights in 1883. At first, he thought that those were the fires that Apaches had made. Neighbors told the shepherd that they had seen the mysterious lights too. They all decided to check the Apache theory, and it turned out to be wrong. There were no traces of a fire in the place the lights had been flying above. Then, in the 40s, pilots of the nearest Midland airfield saw the Marfa lights. They also wanted to figure out the secret of this phenomenon, but didn't find out anything. More and more people saw the bizarre lights. Many of them were sure that the lights had been some ships of an extraterrestrial civilization. Others said those were the souls of wandering spirits. But scientific theories seemed much more realistic. A group of physics students conducted their own investigation and found out that the lights were the headlights of cars passing on the nearest highway. Okay, some lights do look like headlights, but what about those that take off into the sky and change their colors? It may be an optical illusion that occurs when a layer of cold air presses on a warm one. You can observe the same visual effect in the ocean, when it seems to you that a ship is floating in the air on the horizon. But if these lights are headlights and an optical illusion, why do people see them only a few times a year? Another version of the light's origin suggests that they're something like swamp lights. You can see mysterious bright balls rising into the sky in the middle of the night. Organic substances such as twigs, leaves, and fallen trees decompose in wet areas and emit phosphine and methane gases. When these substances come into contact with oxygen, they ignite, but there are no such wet places in West Texas. Where could this gas come from? There are a lot of oil and natural gas reserves in the bowels of this region, and all these substances can contain phosphine and methane. It sounds realistic, but scientists have not confirmed this version yet. Aerospace engineer James Bunnell explained the nature of Marfa lights by an unusual electric charge. Solid substances such as minerals and various crystals generate electricity under pressure, and this underground energy bursts out in the form of multicolored lights. But the scientist couldn't prove his theory. Marfa lights are still a mystery. Perhaps you can solve it. Other lights surprise people in Norway in the city of Hessdalen. Hessdalen lights, unlike other similar phenomena, can often appear in the night sky. And of course, people have recorded them on camera many times. From 1981 to 1984, Hessdalen lights appeared 10 to 20 times a week. Now, people observe them from 10 to 20 times a year. These giant balls float in the air, pulsate, flash, and move very fast. Also, the balls can hang in the air from a few seconds to several hours. Even though people recorded them on camera many times, scientists still cannot study them. Hessdalen lights are very bright, and if people understand their nature, they can create light sources using this unknown alternative energy. So far, there are several theories about these lights. Physicists suggest that the balls appear when clouds of dust containing scandium burn in the air. It's a light silver-colored metal. There are many deposits of this substance in the valley where people observe Hessdalen lights. Another theory says that the balls are the result of the accumulation of macroscopic crystals in the dust plasma. This plasma is formed when air is ionized and blah blah blah. In short, this is a complex scientific hypothesis that hasn't been confirmed. Scientists need a lot of funding to study Hessdalen lights. Researchers try to attract investors by saying that the mechanism of Hessdalen lights can encourage a technological leap in light-based technologies. Some of the most famous lights in the world appeared in Phoenix, Arizona in 1997. Tens of thousands of people saw two strange phenomena that day. The first was a giant flying triangle. At about 8 p.m., several lights appeared in the sky, lined up in a triangle. They flew in an even formation through Phoenix and disappeared far into the sky. The second phenomenon started about 2 hours later. People noticed lights hovering in the sky. They didn't form a triangle and moved freely. They burned with a bright light, flew in different directions, and disappeared behind a mountain range southwest of Phoenix. People were scared. They called the police and reported strange lights. Many were sure that those were ships of an extraterrestrial civilization. But the explanation soon appeared. Both incidents were the result of aircraft exercises. In the first case, people saw several planes lined up in a triangle. They flew over Phoenix and landed at an air base nearby. In the second case, exercises were held using lighting rockets. Several planes dropped glowing rockets, which were landing on tiny parachutes for a long time. They burned in the air and then disappeared behind a mountain range. Quite a logical explanation, but then, almost 10 years later, something strange happened again. On April 21, 2008, the Phoenix police station received hundreds of messages from worried residents who had seen strange lights in the sky. 4 bright balls hovered over the city, changing their shape. They became triangular, then rectangular, and then disappeared one by one. The police contacted the nearest airfield, but they said that the radar hadn't seen any objects in the sky. If those had been material things, the radar devices would have shown them. The police had no explanation. The air traffic controllers also didn't know what it was. The case caused a great stir in society. Many began to recall the phenomenon that occurred a decade ago and again claimed that those were extraterrestrial ships, but all disputes ended after 2 days. Some man called local television and admitted that he had created the lights using flares and helium balloons. He tied a flare to a balloon, set it on fire, and lifted it into the air. Then, minutes later, he repeated this action, then again, 4 times. Many witnesses of the lights didn't believe this story and continued to insist on the extraterrestrial nature of the mysterious balls, but they were wrong. Radars would have noticed something if objects with a metal surface had been flying there, but light balloons and flares were too small to be detected by radars. Secondly, all the lights were flying to the east. The wind was blowing in the same direction that day. Third, the time of the burning. Signal rockets burned for about 20 minutes. When one of those lights faded, the second burned down for another minute. And the last one went out about 20 to 30 minutes after the first fire was started. Witnesses mentioned the same duration of time. One of the locals was a neighbor of the guy who confessed to organizing the hoax. The neighbor saw him lighting flares around 8 p.m., at about the time when the calls to the police started. Phoenix lights have become a great example of how easy it is to deceive people and cause a stir.
If you ever fly over the deserts of southern Peru, you'll notice distinct white lines against the rusty red background. Look closer, and you'll see some clear shapes. Straight lines, rectangles, triangles, swirls. It seems like they're parts of huge drawings. You notice a monkey, a whale, a condor, a hummingbird, and whatnot. The lines were created more than 2,000 years ago by the people of the Nazca culture. Thanks to a dry climate and strong winds in the desert, most of the Nazca lines are visible today. To create them, the Nazca people removed the top layer of pebbles and revealed the soil beneath the ground. The color of the soil changes from reddish-brown to yellowish-gray, so the lines always look different. It looks like the creators of the lines started with small-scale models and increased the proportions to create full-scale designs. Scientists have tried to decipher the meaning of the Nazca lines ever since they were first discovered in the 1920s. But the first mention of the lines was actually much earlier, in the 16th century Chronicle of Peru, where they were described as trail markers in the desert. Since you can't really study the lines and their symbolism from the ground, the lines became world famous only in the 1930s with the advent of commercial planes. A decade later, American professor Paul Kosak was doing his research on the lines and noticed one interesting thing. When he looked up from the line, it was pointing directly at the setting sun. It happened one day after the winter solstice, and the scientists concluded that the lines must be the largest astronomy book in the world. German scientist Maria Reiche, who got the nickname the Lady of the Lines, supported the theory that the geoglyphs served as a calendar and had some sort of astronomical purposes. She dedicated 40 years of her life to studying the lines and swept them inch by inch. She also moved into a small house close to the lines to protect them from unwanted visitors. Then in the 1970s, American researchers called the astronomy-related theory into question. They noted that in a region like Nazca, one of the driest places on Earth with only around 20 minutes of rain per year, water is a real treasure, and the straight lines and trapezoids must have had something to do with it. They could be pointing at locations for rituals that the local people organized to obtain water and make crops more fertile. The images of animals in the Andes region are also related to water. Spiders are thought to be a sign of rain. Hummingbirds stand for fertility, and monkeys living in the Amazon symbolize an abundance of water. In more recent years, the Nazca Lines have become the research ground for archaeologists from Yamagata University. They're using high-resolution aerial photography and drones to discover and catalog geoglyphs. The team has identified a total of 358 geoglyphs so far, and 168 out of them in 2022 alone. They found images of humans, camelids, birds, orca whales, cats, and snakes, most likely created between 100 BCE and 300 CE. Some of the images are around 10 to 20 feet long, so it's no wonder no one was able to detect them before. The largest geoglyphs, by comparison, are 1,200 feet across, which is about the height of the Empire State Building. The researchers believe the Nazca Lines were used as a form of communication in the desert. The linear ones pointed the direction from valley to valley. The ones drawn on slopes seem to have been drawn along ancient pathways between settlements. The scientists now plan to find patterns in the geoglyphs depending on their distribution. They use artificial intelligence to analyze the images. The AI generates designs that are likely to be painted in the desert, and the team then checks if they're actually among the Nazca Lines. Another famous Peruvian geoglyph is a candelabra, slightly taller than the Washington Monument. You can find it on a seaside hill in the Paracas Peninsula. Researchers managed to establish the approximate age of the candelabra by analyzing the nearby artifacts. It looks like it dates back to around 200 BCE. The drawing is etched deep into the sand, and it was never meant to look like a candelabra. One theory says that the drawing was supposed to resemble the trident of an Incan deity to please it. Another popular theory is that sailors used it as a beacon for navigation. Effigy Mounds National Monument on the Mississippi River has 195 known Native American mounds. Most of them are conical in shape, and there are also several that look like birds, deer, turtles, bears, and panthers. Scientists have established that the mounds date back to around 450 BCE, and the images are somewhat younger. A study of the mounds found some copper, bone, and stone tools. The builders' descendants say that the mounds served as ceremonial sites. This story is passed down from generation to generation. Some historians believe the mounds could have been also used to mark celestial events or territories. The American Southwest and the nearby regions of Mexico have over 300 intaglios, which are giant images engraved in the ground. The most famous of them are the Blythe intaglios in California, west of the Colorado River. Blythe giants are a group of 6 figures, including that of a human being and an animal. Scientists believe the images are somewhere between 450 and 2,000 years old. According to the local Mojave tribe, there is an image of Mustamho, the creator of life. The animal figure shows a mountain lion who served as his helper. The largest figure is almost as tall as the Leaning Tower of Pisa. The creators of the intaglios had to scrape the dark rock of the desert until the lighter soil showed up. It's nearly impossible to notice them from ground level. That's why they were only discovered in the 1930s, when a pilot flying over them accidentally looked down. The best way to see the giants is still from a helicopter. Kazakhstan can boast its own Nazca Lines, a cluster of around 260 earthworks in the north of the country. The steppe geoglyphs are a variety of geometric shapes, including squares, crosses, circles, and a 3-pronged design. The creators of the images used materials such as dirt, rocks, and lumber to build them out of the ground. A local economist first spotted the geoglyphs while browsing Google Earth in 2007. Archaeologists suppose that the structures go back 8,000 years, but they still don't know who built them or why. One theory says that the lines helped track the sun's movement. NASA got interested in the discovery since the lines are much older than the ones in Peru. They took photos of the steppe geoglyphs from space, trying to solve their mystery. Another fact that makes the lines so special is how huge they are. One of the largest of them has sides as long as an aircraft carrier. The only humans who could have built them must have been the nomadic Stone Age tribes, but it's unlikely that they had such advanced tools. If they did, that would mean that archaeologists need to rethink the abilities of our long-ago ancestors. Organizing such a huge amount of people to work together on a complicated project is an amazing feat. Although the white horse on a lush green hill in Oxfordshire, England, could easily pass for modern art, it's actually one of the most ancient geoglyphs. It was created between the Bronze and Iron Ages and is the oldest chalk-cut hill figure in Britain. Whoever created it had to remove the turf to reveal the chalky white part of the soil. Scientists can only guess why this piece of art was created. It could have been a fertility symbol or a way to mark territory. Aerial images prove that the horse has changed over time because of the soil. It took several centuries to reveal a larger horse-like shape that lies under what we see now.
Deep in the heart of the Large Hadron Collider near Geneva, Switzerland, scientists have embarked on a journey to unlock the secrets of the universe. They've searched for the elusive Higgs boson, a particle that holds the key to understanding the universe itself. And after years of tireless experimentation, the impossible became possible. They finally discovered it. They uncovered a piece of the cosmic puzzle that had eluded us for decades. But what even is the Higgs boson? And why has that changed our understanding of the universe forever? And should you even care? Yes, you should. Just stick with me here. First of all, according to the standard model of physics, the universe is made up of tiny building blocks called particles. You know those, protons, neutrons, and morons. Wait, probably not that last one. Let's scratch it. Anyway, the Higgs boson is the fundamental particle associated with the Higgs field, a field that gives mass to other fundamental particles such as electrons and quarks, which is not the sound that a duck makes, but close. First of all, let's describe the Higgs field. This is one of the fundamental fields of the universe, just like the electromagnetic field, for example, the one that gives us light and electricity. It's like a big, invisible ocean of energy that fills all of the space around us. And just like a real ocean, it has waves and currents. But instead of water, the Higgs field is made up of Higgs bosons. Now imagine you're a tiny little particle swimming through this ocean. Just like a boat in the water, you'll feel resistance as you move through the Higgs field. Some of these particles are like speedboats. They can zip through the Higgs field without feeling much resistance at all. And others, for example the W and Z bosons, are more like giant cruise ships. They're big and heavy, so they feel a lot of resistance as they move through the Higgs field. And that resistance is what gives particles mass. The speedboats that slide easily don't pick up any mass, but giant cruise ships interact with the field more strongly and pick up a lot of mass. Now let's describe that more, scientifically. When a particle interacts with the Higgs field, it creates a disturbance in the field, and this disturbance can be thought of as a Higgs boson. And the disturbance that it creates in the Higgs field is what gives mass to the interacting particle. Basically, without this field and the Higgs boson, tiny blocks of our universe, like protons and neutrons, wouldn't have the mass they need to make up atoms. Atoms wouldn't be able to form molecules. And without molecules, you wouldn't have anything. No matter, no stars, no planets, no life as we know it. Not even bright side. Ooh, makes me shudder. So not only is the Higgs boson incredibly important, but it's also mysterious and fascinating. That's where it got its beautiful holding nickname from. The Higgs boson was first proposed in the 1960s by a physicist Peter Higgs. Good thing his last name wasn't Bozo. Imagine the Bozo boson. Anyway, Dr. Higgs was part of the group of brilliant scientists who were seeking to understand all the different types of particles that make it up. They noticed that some of them, like the photon, which carries light, don't have mass. But others, like the W and Z bosons, do. And they were like, wait a minute, how is this possible? That's when they generated two ideas: the Higgs boson and the Higgs field. But in order to confirm this theory, we needed some proof. And since we can't see the invisible field itself, we needed to find and track at least one Higgs boson. And finding it was an incredibly hard task, like a real-life game of Where's Waldo? All because the Higgs boson is very rare, very short-lived, and doesn't interact with other particles very often. Yep, it's just like me at parties. The Higgs boson is born when a particle passes through the Higgs field and decays almost immediately after that. Now, you may remember how much the science world rejoiced when they were finally able to discover it. That's because it took decades. First of all, this task was taken up by CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research. They were using the Large Hadron Collider, or the LHC for short. This is the largest and most powerful particle accelerator in the world, located near Geneva, Switzerland. It smashes protons together at incredibly high speeds, recreating conditions that existed just after the Big Bang. This giant machine tries to find new particles and helps us to understand the universe better. Anyway, the team at CERN used the LHC to generate trillions of proton collisions, searching for the telltale signs of the Higgs boson. But with so many collisions happening at once, it was like searching for a needle in the haystack the size of a small country. The search for the Higgs boson was a long and exciting journey that took decades of work and the collaboration of thousands of scientists from all over the world. And after years of searching, they finally found it: the evidence of the Higgs boson. The discovery was announced on July 4, 2012, and it was major news in the science world. It was celebrated by a lot of parties and events in CERN. But it wasn't over yet. The discovery of the Higgs boson had to be confirmed. So the scientists continued to study it and collect more data. And in 2013, they announced that the Higgs boson had been confirmed with a high level of certainty. This discovery was a really big deal because it confirmed a key part of the standard model of physics. The standard model of particle physics is the theory that explains how the universe works at its most basic level. It's a way for scientists to keep track of all the different types of particles and how they interact with each other. And the Higgs boson is like the VIP at this particle party. It's a crucial part of the standard model. Not only does it help to confirm the standard model, but it also highlights the need for new theories and models to explain what the standard model can't. Without the Higgs boson, the standard model wouldn't make sense, and scientists would have to come up with a whole new theory to explain why particles have mass. But with this holy particle, everything fell into place and the standard model was complete. It was like solving a giant puzzle, or finding a glue that holds the universe together. Now, the discovery of the Higgs boson was a huge breakthrough for physics, but it also opened up new questions and possibilities for future research. So, what's next? Well, just like any good puzzle, there are always more pieces to find and more mysteries to uncover. Scientists in LHC continue their research and experiments with the Higgs boson. They're collecting data and analyzing it to better understand the properties of this particle. They're looking at how it interacts with other particles, how it decays, and even how it behaves in different conditions. Also, the standard model explains a lot of what we observe in the universe, but it still has some gaps. For example, right now, it can't explain things like dark matter and dark energy. So we've created another area of research: the potential new physics beyond the standard model of particle physics. This new area should include things like dark matter and gravity, and some scientists believe that the Higgs boson could become a crucial part of it. It could hold the key to understanding all these mysterious phenomena. To find out if that's really the case, scientists are currently searching for other particles that could be associated with the Higgs field, such as the Higgsinos. They would be a new type of particle that could help explain, for example, how dark matter works. And lastly, researchers are also looking at the Higgs boson's role in the early universe. We want to see how it may have played a part in the formation of galaxies, stars, and even life as we know it. It's like a time machine that helps us understand how the universe came to be. So, all in all, the discovery of the Higgs boson opened a door to a whole new world of possibilities, and scientists are having a blast exploring all the new questions and mysteries that come with it. It's like a treasure map, pointing us to new mysteries to uncover and new theories to explore. Hey, perhaps there is a boson after all. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.